Good morning, everybody. I'll call the meeting to order. My name is Kim Hammond. I'm Principal Clerk of the House of Assembly, and I will be the clerk for this committee. To begin this morning, we have to have an election of the chair. Are there any nominations from the floor?
I nominate Gary Trumper.
Thank you. Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? Mr. Trimper, your acclaimed chair.
All right, we're sitting down. Okay.
You look much better.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Thank you. My name is Perry Trimper, MHA for Lake Melville. First of all, do we have any committee substitutions? I look over to my right. Everyone's here who's supposed to be here?
Supposed to be here, but I'm not on the paper, so I don't know myself.
MHA Parents in for MHA Force. No, they were gone.
Okay. We just need to enter that into the record. Yeah, here we go. So yes, we have Bonavista, we have exploits. We do not have exploits.
No, I'm subbing.
Okay, so you're subbing. So that's Terranova. Labrador West, Lake Melville is here. We have Mount Pearl North. That's you, okay. And that's, what is? Yeah, that's.
I apologize to the committee. I forgot to actually call a vote for Mr. Trimper to be chair. All those in favor? All those against? I believe
Okay.
the ayes have it, and Mr. Trimper is chair.
I'm in. Okay, thank you. Close call. Placentia St. Mary's, who's replacing? That would be my friend from Virginia. Mr. Abbott, you're replacing? You're replacing Sherry Gantman-Walsh. Yeah. Your district again? East Kitty. I've heard of it. Yeah. Okay. And we have Mr. Cora for Waterford Valley. Okay, thank you very much. As we all know, I think many of us have been at this before, so we'll take a break about halfway through, about 10 minutes. Just a little reminder for those who aren't familiar with the mics. We just need you to wave so that the broadcast can pick you up. Please wait for the tally light to come on, and then identify who you are and your position, and then you can go ahead and speak. Ask not to make adjustments to the chairs. Anyway, I'm just the messenger. We have water coolers here to our side. And do we have any unaffiliated members? I do not see any, so we'll proceed without raising that question. So now I ask the committee members please to wave. Light comes on, identify yourself. We'll go through that, and then I'll turn to the department side. Starting with Mr. Parrott.
Lloyd Parrott, MHA for Terranova.
Hi, Megan Winter, Research and Policy Analyst with the Official Opposition Office.
Craig Parody, MHA for the District of Bonavista.
Jordan Brown, the MHA for Labrador West.
Stephen Kent, Research Assistant for the Third Party Caucus.
Just wave your hand.
Eileen Anderson, GMO.
Krista Howell, MHA for St. Barb, Lansing Meadows.
Jamie Korab, MHA, Waterford Valley.
John Abbott, MHA, St. John's East, Kitty.
Okay, thank you all. And now over to the department and to also introduce yourselves.
Megan Nesbitt, Assistant Deputy Minister, Corporate and Strategic Services. Andrew Parsons, Minister, IET, MHA, Burgeo-Lapoille.
John Cowan, Deputy Minister.
Craig Martin, Associate Deputy Minister for Energy.
Heather Tizard, Associate Deputy Minister, Industry and Economic Development.
Stephen Mercer, Departmental Controller.
Paul Carter, Assistant Deputy Minister for Mining and Mineral Development.
Susan Wilkins, Executive Director for Renewable Energy.
Julian Ludmer, Assistant Deputy Minister for Business and Innovation.
Tansy Munden, Director of Communications.
Michael King, Executive Assistant to the Minister.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm sure you were up late last night reading the minutes from our last meeting, and I'm looking for, if there's no errors and omissions, I'd ask for a mover of these minutes, please. It's a move by the member for Terranova. All those in favor? Against? Minutes are approved. Thank you very much. So let's proceed now with the estimates review process. I'll ask the clerk to call the first heading, and then I'll proceed to introduce the first responder and questioner from the committee. You get 15 minutes for questions in the first round. And after that round, we'll go in rounds of 10 minutes at a time, alternating between members of the committee. So I'll now ask the clerk.
Department of Industry, Energy and Technology, 1.1.01 to 1.2.03 inclusive, executive and support services.
Shall 1.1.01 to 1.2.03 carry. I now recognize the Minister of IET for his opening remarks, please.
Thank you. I don't have a whole lot to start off with. We'll save some for the end, although my deputy did have a written submission he was prepared to make. I'm kidding. I just had to get him going in the morning. No, I'm prepared to, let's just get into it, and looking forward to the best part of the budget process.
Thank you. Okay, and now call on the member for Terranova.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start off, I guess, by some platitudes. I've been in this position as critic, I guess, for a couple of years now, and previously a couple of years before that. And I will say it's been a really great relationship with the department. I've always received the help required and got the answers to the questions asked. The minister has been forthcoming with everything, whether it was a phone call, email, or through the estimates process. Certainly his assistant, Michael King, has been a great help to us, specifically when it comes to quarry applications and the other things that have tied us up over time. So I guess I understand the amount of work that happens inside the department, so the first thing I'd say is thank you to you all, and thank you for being here, and keep up the great work. It's a testament to the department, the minister, and everyone involved, so thank you very much. I'm just going to start off with some general questions, and I'll jump right into some questions about the Terranova FPSO. As we go further through, I'll have questions on different subheadings. But the overhaul of Terranova FPSO, is there any idea right now what the remaining lifespan is going to be?
Mr. Martin.
Craig Martin, Associate Deputy Minister of Energy. At the time, the lifespan, when it was refitted there a while back, was estimated to be about 14 years, I believe, at that time. So we're looking right now, I think, at a remaining period of around 10 to 11 years.
So since the overhaul, I guess, and we've gone back out to field, has there been any change in, I guess, PPP, the proven, probable, and possible overlook, or is it still the same as it was before the overhaul?
Mr. Martin.
Craig Martin. There's nothing at this point in time that's been changed in terms of the forecast and that from an overall. However, they are potentially looking at doing some additional work next year that may or may not cause improvements.
Okay. Is it still the goal of government to double the offshore oil and gas production?
Minister.
So what I would say is that I saw this pronouncement the other day when the opposition leader was in town campaigning, talking about he supports our goals. I would point out that that comes from the last, I guess, policy document. I can't remember the name, but it was prior to my time, I think, actually, in this role. So I can't say that we are not doing that, but I also can't say that we can absolutely have that happen because some of the factors are out of our control. The biggest thing I can say to you is that philosophically, we would absolutely support that and would want to see it, which is why we've made some of the moves that we have. So it's not like we're philosophically objecting to that. Some of the situations in terms of Beta Nord, things like that, not going as quickly as we'd like to see them, but some of the decisions we've made in the past were to achieve that objective, where there's Terra Nova continuing on, supporting West White Rose, things like that. So we're all in if we can get there. I just can't make that promise that it will happen, because who can make that promise?
Yeah. You can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe the document's name was Advance 2030. So is it safe to say that that document is no longer, I guess, the core principle that the department is using?
The minister.
I can honestly say that it's not a document I refer to continually. It was done prior to my time in the department. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it is, you know, significant years in. I've been on 5 years here now, which is hard to believe. So not that I have anything against the document, but I've started from the mandate letters I've been given from the Premier, just dealing with the issues as we find them, but having the general mindset coming from the Premier down. Yeah, it's a 2018 document. So it's one of those things where I'm not dismissing the document, but I sort of taken the current Premier's mandate letters taken from that, and the policy, I guess, direction of government as a whole.
Member for Terra Nova.
Recently, we passed legislation that would provide mirror legislation with Atlantic Accord legislation that the federal government put down. In that legislation, part of it allowed for sharing of resources, I guess, or joint drilling, joint recapture of oil resources offshore. Do you have any opinion as to whether or not that bill will actually result in those situations or scenarios happening? Is there anyone exploring that currently?
Did you want to leave that there? What's that? Okay. So what I would say is that it's not a current conversation that we're having. Philosophically, we'd love to have that conversation. There's no conversation that we won't have. We have had some recent visits by some of the big players, we'll say, in the offshore. We've literally never had a situation where we wouldn't talk to them or explore or listen to what they want to do. So not something I've had to deal with, but hopefully it's there, and hopefully somebody will get a chance to have that conversation.
Okay. There's been multiple concerns, I guess, certainly by people inside the province, by your government, and by the opposition, expressed that oil and gas emissions cap is going to reduce the likelihood of further offshore development. How do you see that cap hurting us going forward? And I know that there's lots of different conversation about how different parties would handle it, but the reality of it is if we're going to develop, the cap is going to hurt us at some point. How do we circumvent that in order to move forward?
Good question. So what I would say is just a few thoughts on the cap, which we have opposed from the beginning, led by the Premier and our department doing the analysis. So number one, we are not supportive. We were not supportive under the previous Prime Minister and his previous Minister of Environment. We've expressed it to the current Prime Minister, and we would express it to him or to the opposition leader if he were to form Prime Minister. We'll see what that philosophy is. I think the current Prime Minister has made some commentary about not having a production-driven emissions cap or this or that. We'll wait and see what comes out after. I mean, there's a lot of stuff said on the campaign trail. We want to see what that impact is. The way around that is that, I mean, at the end of the day, if we cannot show them how it would have a negative impact on this province. A province, I would point out, that's helping fund a lot of other provinces in terms of equalization. What I would say is we always had the ability to go to court and to challenge the emissions cap, which we would have no hesitation doing, and has been a conversation.
West White Rose is due to go out soon. Thank God. It's been a long process. It's been interrupted by COVID and other scenarios, I guess. Do we have any idea right now when we think that's going to come online?
Just referring to my Associate Deputy Minister Craig Martin, the current understanding is the fall. I think we'll see some movement very, very soon, obviously. But the fall timeline is what we've been given and haven't had any change from that, I guess, is the latest.
So is the expectation for us to see first oil in this year, 2025, or is it 2026?
Craig Martin. It's our understanding the first oil is still expected in 2025.
So with the expectation of a new resource coming online, has that product been accounted into this year's budget from the overall scheme of things? And if so, you know, how many barrels of oil is playing into this year's budget?
Craig Martin, Associate Deputy Minister. That would be a question the Department of Finance would have to answer. We feed them information for the budget process, but they actually do the budget estimates.
Can you disclose what the information from West White Rose that was fed to the department is?
Craig Martin. I don't have that information here with me today. I can check and determine whether or not we can disclose that.
Okay, thank you. Minister, obviously the bull arm sale of bull arm or potential lease has come up in recent time. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is it's down to two proponents. Is the department leading negotiations with these two proponents, or is it Oilco? Is it, or a combination of both?
Okay. What I would suggest is this combination between our department and finance, although personally I think we take the lead in terms of our relationships with the two different current proponents. Oilco is also involved in that, I guess, as the actual, you know, it falls under Oilco. But quite frankly, IET, as far as I'm concerned, is the lead of the whole thing. We answer the questions, we deal with the parties. But anything we do, and including one of the reasons that we had a delay in this was that finance had to do that analysis as we went through the process. So that's where we currently stand. But I mean, depending on if you want, I can go on further on bull arm where we are. Sort of, it's more of a general as opposed to. But I'll leave it to you if you want to ask a question.
Yeah, if you don't mind providing an overview, that would be great, actually.
Yep. So what I would say is this. We went through an RFP process. Everybody knows it. It was commenced, I think, 1.5 years, 2 years ago, went right up until March of this year. Part of that was a combination of us doing analysis, finance doing analysis, but I do not, you know, I would split the blame evenly because we had to go back to the proponents and say, we need this, we need that, we have to make sure you're compliant. My guiding philosophy in all this is I don't care what you got to do, just get it right. Don't be going through a half ASS process. Am I allowed to curse, Speaker? It's my last one, I don't care.
Spelling it works.
We won't call a point of order.
It's my last one, I don't care.
You say donkey.
What I would say is this, though. Everybody in the province wants, if this isn't possibility, we want the best process possible. We want the most information possible. So if it took a little bit longer for us to get that information, we would do that. At the same time, the other thing about these processes is that generally nobody comes full value for a government asset. It's the same thing. I mean, people have talked about bull arm for ages. So we've come at it from a, we'd like to see it in private hands, we'd like to see more activity, but we want to get full value. The process got us there. We picked the two proponents. They both have their own partnership groups. I will also say that we've had other people that have expressed interest. And so I'm not opposed to anything here to see if we get the best value for the province, which means whether it's a sale, whether it's a lease, or whether there's no deal at all. So now that we have the RP done, there's negotiations have started. Parallel, we can deal with different groups. And it's just about finding, is there a sweet spot? Is there things they need to do? Neither one was acceptable on its own in sense of, oh, this is such a good deal, we're going to take it. So I'll trust the staff of the department and the other players, including finance and Oilco, to do the job and then see when it comes along. So no timeline. I think I've said this publicly, like, I'd like to see something happen at some point. We all want it to happen soon. But with an asset of that value, I recognize the harm in encumbering it with somebody else and not having any say and not getting the full value of what we think we should get.
I guess, so just from my own perspective, having been involved with the Hebron project extensively, the wind project in St. Lawrence extensively. And I think the minister will agree that I've been a proponent of something happening with Bull Arm. It leads me now to a question about timing, though, because it has taken so long. You know, we're looking at LNG-NL, Beta Nord, the possibility of wind projects. And from a logistical standpoint, I would argue that there's no better place in Newfoundland, and probably no place, it's probably the only place where that is possible to bring some of these wind turbines into from a logistical standpoint when you're looking at power lines, turns and roads and other things that have to happen. Does the timing concern the department? It must. I mean, because I would think, you know, with the lack of resources from our ability to build in other places, if we turn this over privately now, I guess will we be protected in trying to attract other people to come here and do that work?
What I would say, I mean, look, timing's always a factor. I'd like to see it happen. I don't want to close us off from opportunities, but I also don't want to, in haste, do something that prevents us from getting a bigger win. I will say there are other parties, other projects, other options that have been presented to government that are massive in scope. There has to be due diligence done, and we're willing to do that due diligence. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we all want what's the biggest and best and what's the most comprehensive, because there's different aspects to it. I think Beta Nord has been one of the driving factors of attention, but it is far from the only possibility for that spot. So is that sort of measuring, gauging it, like, because I'd like to see something happen, but the thought of doing something, thinking it's great, and then realizing you missed out on bigger and better. So at the same time, though, you can't wait around forever for bigger and better. It has to be real.
Yeah, bigger and better obviously don't always come, so we all get that.
Yeah.
LNG-NL, has there been, you know, it was a big topic for quite a time, and then it went quiet, and I'm hearing some ruffling in the back, noise in the background again now. Is it still a conversation that the department is having? Is it falling off again, or?
Still is. So I have not had any input from that group in some time. Anytime they requested me, we sat down. For my timeline, I have a pretty bad memory. When was the last time they were in front of us? Well over a year since they were in front of us. And it's not like, you know, and me and you both know, it's not like there's people out there saying, geez, we can't get a meeting with the department. We're pretty open. The good news is that the work we're doing internally, independent of that, so phase 1, which hopefully we'll get some news out on soon, and then we announced phase 2 money yesterday. I feel more optimistic now than I did even a couple of years ago, just because of the way things have gone globally. Other than that, I don't know if you've had any input, Craig, from LNG-NL? We funded them. I mean, we've tried to be helpful, but just haven't heard a whole lot.
Next, the member for Lab West.
Thank you, Chair. I thank the Minister and the staff for being here today. Given, like I said, the incentives there, I know that they may have put money there for telecom, for Hearts Light, Holyrood, that area and that. Is there any other on the list that needs to be done as well that the department is looking at for improvement to high-speed internet and cell phone service?
The Minister.
So I'll make sort of a quick sort of overview, and then I'll probably turn to Heather, who's in charge of that. The first thing I would lead off with saying, absolutely, there's a ton of work left to do. In terms of cellular coverage, and Heather could probably talk a little bit about the specifics from this year's budget in terms of the funding we have and the carryover. So a couple things. The ones we just did was some money that came from the police radio program that was left. There's still some others, and that was based on a number of factors, including proximity, including population size, a whole bunch of things. There's still a ton of places left to do. And we're willing to work with anybody. So there's a list within government of just self-identified from people that have written to me, people that Bell or some other provider might identify, or we've looked at and said we've had representation from whoever. We've also looked at spots, I'll just use it as an example, Burgeo Road. my district. We did a Wi-Fi repeater thing down there because it was very low cost. It's very expensive to have cell coverage along 150 kilometers of deserted roadway. It's just no provider's going to do. It's crazy. But we actually put in something. I think this is starting the right direction. And we've looked at what are other roadways that we could try that on because it's low cost. The issue being, though, we need a local partner that can help with the day-to-day maintenance. Like if something goes wrong and something blows down, who can put it back up? If we need to put a backup generator in for some reason, who can handle that? In that case, there's actually an internet provider in Burgeo, BBS, that did that. I'm looking at the same thing in other places. It's already done, I think, up in Labrador in a few spots. So we're willing to look at that as well. A couple other things I would say. Number one, and we forget this all the time, it's a federal obligation. It's a federal obligation. They need to get on board. They've been there for broadband. That's great and wonderful. But they need to come with more. They need to come with more. The second part is that we don't put enough pressure by any stretch on the providers themselves. Not even close. And that's like any problem that doesn't have a sole root cause becomes difficult because there's multiple parts of it and it becomes harder to combat that. The other thing is that I think we're going to see massive satellite uplink opportunities going forward in terms of, you know, not having to rely on towers and everything else. I think we're going to see that in the next, I'm willing to say 5 years, but like anything, they got to figure out how to monetize it. What I'll do is I'll stop now, and maybe we can mention specific what was in the budget because I have no recollection off the top of my head.
Heather Tizard.
Heather Tizard. So with respect to internet, you know, there's the Universal Broadband Fund that we're continuing to work on. So that work is continuing. You know, hopefully it'll move a little more quickly as we move into next year. But that's you know, covering across. It'll be about 2028 before that's fully implemented. On the cell phone coverage that you mentioned, or the projects that you just mentioned on those 3 projects. As the minister referenced, that's from the radio project, so it was $2 million that Bill allotted for that project, so that covers those 3 areas. On the cell phone coverage, as the minister mentioned, we have the Hotspots initiative that we did over in Burgeo. We had the Trans-Labrador Highway through that TI depot. As the minister mentioned, we're looking at other areas under that as well. So,
thank you.
That answers.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
For Labrador West.
Now, given that, you know, we're seeing, I guess, tariffs one day, tariffs next day, no tariffs. Given that, you know, we got a lot of hydroelectric work and I guess Newfoundland Labrador hydro work, given that, I guess what is the department doing to cushion that, given that there's a significant amount of work being proposed, even with the what was it, Beta Spare 8, the combustion and turbine, and then possibly the stuff that's going on up in Labrador. What support or things is the department doing for Newfoundland Labrador Hydro to, I guess, make sure that they stay within budget or possibly of helping with that kind of project?
So Honourable the Minister.
So I can lead off on that. I mean, the good news is that, you know, in a lot of cases, NLH is the people doing the work. We have full faith in them and their abilities to make sure they take these things into consideration. And I can say, especially since the appointment of Jennifer Williams, I have full faith in them. That doesn't mean we don't scrutinize them and question them. I haven't had anything brought to me specifically by Hydro at this point to my level as to, you know, what is necessary. I know we have the contingency in the budget. I think it's $200 million to see what comes of that. I don't know if John might be able to speak to any conversations he's had on it.
John Cowan. So yeah, not a whole lot of conversations with Jennifer on it. She has raised it. Hydro is watching it closely. You know, none of those projects are hitting the ground right now, so we're still in this wait and see period. But as they get closer and they talk to vendors, and if those issues start to creep in, you know, we'll certainly have those discussions with Hydro, and we're here to support them as required.
Member for Labrador West.
Thank you, Chair. Going as last year, I guess the department put out the business stipend for businesses that were closed due to evacuations due to wildfires. Is there any contingency put away this year for the possibility of the same thing for either my area or any other area of the province that may be affected significantly by wildfires?
I might have to defer to somebody else. There's not a plan in place, but given there was a willingness to do it last year, there would absolutely be a willingness to do it this year, and in fact, we'd have the precedent in place. It's our hope that it doesn't have to happen, but within the department, other departments, and the contingency, we're able to respond to that and hopefully don't need to.
Labrador West.
Would the minister be able to share the amount that was spent for that project, or I guess a ballpark of what was actually issued?
I have to check around here. I don't know if we actually have it. Oh, Julian got it? Oh, perfect. Julian.
Julian Ludmer, yes, it was $500,000 that was allocated for that fund.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead, Labrador West.
Thank you, Chair. Also, with that, I guess, what is the, I guess you guys are obviously keeping a close eye on tariffs and that. What is, I guess, put away inside the department for a possibility for help businesses through this time, other than the $200 million? Is there anything allocated or a program allocated for that?
The minister.
So two things. So the big one obviously is the $200 million contingency, depending on where that goes. I mean, that was the main purpose of that and has some flex. We have nothing specific within the department because we haven't had, it's one of those things where it's hard to make a specific program when we sort of have that general fear. We do have a fair amount of existing money within different funding areas, especially within the shops run by the ADM and the associate ADM. So Julian can probably talk a little more about what we have there and how it can be applied.
Julian Ludmer. Yes, we have the Innovation and Business Investment Corporation, which provides a lot of the support that we provide for businesses. So we've recently had a meeting with the board of directors of the corporation to propose to them increasing some of the thresholds for support for a one-year period so that we can provide extra support to businesses that may be impacted. That is working its way through approval processes right now.
Member for Labrador West.
Thank you, Chair. Given, I guess, with all that stuff, I noticed that, obviously there's been extra travel and stuff noticed through, I guess, from the government and the Premier's office and that. How many trips have the Department or the Premier have gone for trade missions, given the tariffs and trying to open up new markets?
Honourable the Minister.
So I can't speak to the Premier. We have to wait for those estimates because I'm not sure. I know he's just recently back from Japan. I know he's been in Washington. Myself, so far this year, and I have a list of where we were last year, and some of those definitely bore fruit. A lot of them, it's funny, last year when we went, it wasn't really thinking tariffs. We always think diversification and investment attraction and things like that. This year it has been on our mind, but we'll do the same ones again this year in terms of Rotterdam for hydrogen. There'll be Houston probably for OTC, and the standard with PDAC in Toronto. Other than that, I'm trying to remember where we've been so far in 2025. Iceland. We were in Iceland, and that was on a renewable energy opportunity there, plus the fact that it's amazing how many similarities we have there. We are at PDAC in Toronto, which was mining, which is, as you know full well, is the world's biggest mining show. We were supposed to get the Sarah Week in Houston, which is a different one in March. Unfortunately, I couldn't go because we had that bill here that mirror legislation. So that shagged up the trip to Houston for Sarah Week, which was the one where it actually gets a fair bit of attention and was probably for me the preferable one this year versus going to OTC. Sarah Week, we had staff there, and we do have staff that go to each of these and come back with a report. Other than that, what I would suggest is it's across different boards. So the Premier's office leads some, tourism does some. We probably have a lot of the same ones, but we've been open to, and we look at opportunities as well. So for instance, we'll get someone that'll reach out to us, and if it makes sense, we will go there. We recently just talked to a crowd in Nord Space. I did something on this last week where they're going to have the first spaceport and rocket launch in Canada, I think ever, in St. Lawrence. So it turns out that they want us to come up and visit their headquarters in just outside Toronto, and there's actually a Canadian Space Agency show at the same time. So that's a new one that we've never gone to. We'll probably have, if I'm not there, we'll have the staff there, because it's a new avenue. That's not one we've ever gone to, and it's exciting and intriguing. Other than that, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I have the full list from last year. So Houston OTC, PDAC, Rotterdam for the World Hydrogen Summit, which is now the standard bearer. We were in Hamburg for a Hydrogen Expo and for the signing of an MOU. Japan and New York. Japan primarily just to deal with the mining opportunities that we got there. We saw sort of what came out of that. New York was just meeting with different peoples in terms of investments, and at that time it was very much their worry is on the economic and defense security for the country, which is based on things like critical minerals where they look to us. Calgary, we had an Energy and Mines conference that they hold every year. Some are different. That's more of the FPT model. And San Diego last year for the Bio International Convention, one of the biggest, and they have that one every year. There's a massive presence there for biotechnology, medical technology, is one that's really come on our radar in the last 3 years between us and health, because we see a massive opportunity in biotech.
Member for Labrador West? Are you done? Okay. Member for Terranova.
Just a few more general questions before I go into some line-by-line stuff. It's interesting you just said critical minerals, rare earth minerals, so on and so forth. So, I mean, the general consensus around the globe is that rare earth minerals is a bit of a race as to who can get there the fastest and produce the highest amount and the best quality and get it out of the ground and get it to market. Search Minerals has a substantive find up there, obviously bordered externally by some radioactive till, and it's arguably the best materials in the world. Has there been any progress made in development up there is the first question. And I guess the carry on to that is that through the Churchill Falls MOU, we know we have an issue with power in Labrador. Has anyone brought to the table the fact that we should be negotiating for access to greater power earlier in order to move some of these things forward? I think it's one of the most important things we could be doing right now, actually.
Honourable Minister.
So I can lead off, and then I'll turn to our new ADM, Paul Carter, to get into the more specifics, because he would probably have more day-to-day conversation. So we're actively involved with Search. Biggest issue with them is getting themselves straightened out. Obviously, as we know, it's common knowledge to everybody that they had some internal issues, got taken off, they couldn't trade. They're just getting themselves back in order there with buy-in from, I think it's the Nuntuavut, I think is one of their partners in that. I've been meeting with them since they've been there. I've been actively excited for them, and we want to help them get somewhere. Where we can help with that probably is more exploration, things like that. I see as a massive opportunity. And the stuff that they've talked about also in terms of processing was extremely exciting, because they want to do something here in the province. Happy to have the power conversation. They haven't come to us generally on that I'm aware of yet, but that's a part of the conversations going forward. Their last year has just been courts and trying to find money. I'll turn it over to Paul, maybe.
Yeah, no, sorry, Paul Carter speaking. Not much different than what the minister has communicated. We're actively monitoring the project, to make sure that, we're available to them and, to help them through some of their issues. I mean, we're excited as well for the project and the opportunity. Rare earth elements, and they're not alone in terms of facing some of these challenges if you look at other rare earth element projects around the world. Certainly, from our perspective, the rare earth element extraction and processing is of very important to us, and how we might be able to participate in further building and developing that supply chain. Ideally, we would like to be in a position where we can actually process our own rare earth elements in the province. And, as part of that work, of course, we'd be actively involved and engaging with the university, Memorial University, the College of the North Atlantic, and, we're having early discussions with them about their interest in that space. So certainly, and as part of one of our outcomes and objectives of the critical mineral plan is to, develop these supply chains in the province where it's economic to do so. And ultimately, we're working towards that. And, similar to the minister's comment, they haven't really gotten to the point of talking about power with us in any detailed way. But certainly, well, we would actively work with Newfoundland Labrador Hydro in terms of what a energy scenario might potentially look like for that project should it get to the point that it moves to development.
The member for Terranova.
Yeah, and so I'm clear as to why energy is important. It's an issue I brought up here each year, and I'll bring it up again now. I guess if I visit Labrador West and you look at thermal generation or any sites around the province, certainly Boise's Bay is a big one. And a thorn in my side in many ways, and not just because the fuel for thermal generation comes from Quebec, but because the fuel from thermal generation comes from Quebec, and it's not because it's from Quebec. We have an entity operating in the province, and if you visit the site, every vehicle up there has a Quebec plate on it. Every supply comes from Quebec City, and the ship leaves Newfoundland empty on every single trip. It lands, offloads, goes to Quebec to reload, and it's operating here, and we're not capitalizing on the taxes or the opportunities that are here, as simple as registration of vehicles to a whole lot of other things. So when I talk about power, I mean, I think we should be utilizing our own power, but that's an issue that exists in Boise's Bay, and it's also an issue that exists in Labrador West, and one that should have been addressed a long time ago. If we send a workforce to anywhere else in the country, we got 10 days to change our license plates over, our insurance and everything else, and those provinces capitalize on what we do instantly, yet we fail and have failed, certainly in Boise's Bay and Labrador West, for decades.
The Honourable Minister.
So what I would suggest is it's certainly not the first time I've heard the member bring it up, but I can honestly say I have never had a single solitary citizen ever bring it to me in that regard. What I would suggest is this: I would be more than happy for you and I to have a conversation where we get into more details so that we can go to Newfoundland Labrador Hydro and bring this up and see. Some of these things are, fixable, possibly. Some of these things may not be fixable, but I'm happy to go at it and have a look-see. That's not a problem. But in terms of getting, from being brought up from other people within the industry or whatever, is not something that is brought to me. It's just, honest to God, it's just you bring it up. So if you bring it up, I'm happy to have a look.
Yeah, I would say I've heard it from companies that operate on site up there. I've heard it from individuals that live in those areas. What I would say is that you're not going to hear it from the industry players that are involved because they're saving money. It's cost savings for them, and it's a loss for the province. So that's my point. I mean, it's revenue we should be collecting versus going outside the province. Just a quick question, and we all know the answer, but every time we have the conversation, and I'll step outside of industry to a different industry that's not involved here, but even the fishery, when we talk about how we price stuff here, certainly when it comes to our minerals and whatnot, one of the, I've always argued long that the two of the biggest issues we have here are geography and population. And geography because we're so fast, and population because we don't have enough people. The best way to increase that is through work, and the one thing that we've failed to do very well here is secondary processing, as indicated Search wants to do. We fail in Labrador West with the exception of pelletizing of iron ore. We've managed to do some secondary processing with regards to Boise's Bay, which is great. Is there a thought going forward that we'll try and do more secondary processing? And the example I'll use is this. I had an interesting conversation with a fisherman the other day, and different industries, but very similar. The question has always been, why is the price of fish, the price of crab or whatever, so different in Newfoundland than it is in Nova Scotia or other places? Well, I would argue in Nova Scotia they handle the product once, and it goes to a plant. And not only is it frozen goods that go to market, but there's secondary processing, and it's not handled multiple times. In our fishery, we bring stuff in, and we prepare it to go elsewhere for secondary processing, and it's handled multiple times, which is, in turn makes our product cheaper. And cheaper is great because we just seen we're shipping product now to Australia in a large venture with our iron ore. But we need to find a way to help our province, right? And a part of that comes through secondary processing. So has the department looked at any initiatives or any way to increase that?
The Minister.
I'll lead off, and I'm being facetious here, but the department is in no way going to touch the fishery in any way, shape, or form.
Totally agree. I'm just giving an example.
And I've managed to get through a number of years.
I heard that's why you were leaving.
It's a conversation we're always willing to have. And what I would say, and I mean, it's not a conversation I've had to have now. It's a conversation if search had advanced to where I wanted it when I first got here, if they hadn't gone off the rails, maybe I could be involved in that conversation. I mean, a lot of these secondary processing, I wasn't here for the Voices debate and things like that. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I would point out that they are a heck of a lot more difficult than we often really give credit to. And I don't want to criticize or applaud previous ministers, governments, premiers, and all that, because I didn't know what they're dealing with. You know, I have a little bit of insight on Voices because my father was involved in that, but that's just him telling me. And again, it's probably bias. He's not going to tell me if he screwed things up. But what I would say is this: I don't disagree with the notion that it has to be a bigger conversation, and it can be. What I would say also, though, is that I think the department and the leadership of the province, the big one where it came down to a lot of pressure to get something done, and we fought back on that, was Terra Nova. That was one where it was pretty easy to take what was offered and think it was the best thing, and it wasn't. And to the point where we're like, nope, we can't do this. And that, you know full well as I did, we would have gotten a bad beating if we hadn't done that. But the fact that we stood strong and then got the deal we got, that's the mindset that has to go into secondary processing, because it's never going to be easy. But the province, and the good thing, I think the province is in a spot with the resources we have spread across the gamut. We are not reliant on one, which is what I think allows us to have the fortitude to push back when people say it can be done better elsewhere, cheaper elsewhere, where we can push back and say, no, that's not true, and it ain't happening. And that's where I think future generations of the leadership of this province need to keep in mind, because if they say that it's be-all end-all, it's not. It's not. We all want to see. We want to see development. We want to see processing, but not at all costs. So hopefully that's where it goes. But I mean, I get your points. Secondary processing that we need to see here in all aspects.
Thank you. Now call the member for Labrador West.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple questions for that. My last department is the study for the third transmission line with the partners with Rio Tinto and Takora and Newfoundland Labrador Hydro in the department. Is that still on schedule to be the study be completed on time in the spring, summer?
Honourable Minister, the ADM Paul Carter.
I've been working together with Newfoundland Labrador Hydro as part of that initiative, and the department has been active, of course, and a lot of this relates back to perhaps some of the earlier comments, even in terms of our ability to do more value adding in the province and unlocking new projects in iron ore. So at present, my understanding with respect to the process that's been engaged, you are correct. There's actually 4 participants. It's IOC, Rio Tinto, it's Takora, it's Champion Iron, and of course us as government representing the Julian Lake project are all participating in that facility study to examine what the power demand in Labrador West looks like to support the high purity iron ore development growth, and what an associated transmission line should look like. So that work is progressing. It's a rare and unique opportunity perhaps that you have for actual projects at one time, looking at a common piece of infrastructure. So it does allow, of course, for shared costs associated with that, which is, very interesting as well. I understand that the RFP, has been issued for the consultant to complete the work, and that Hydro are currently working through back and forth with potential vendors in terms of who may be awarded the work and that it would advance. So it is active and progressing.
Member for Labrador West.
Thank you. And next was on that. Sorry, place. Going back to the tariffs for a second, there's one other question I had for the department on are you guys looking at wage subsidy or any supports for businesses that could possibly directly be infected? I know that there's been mention in the budget that this will have a significant effect on the forestry industry. Is there any work being done with that to support those workers?
The Deputy Minister.
John Cowan, yeah, wage subsidies would be RPGS. It wouldn't fall to us.
That's my last question for this section.
Okay, back to the member for Terranova. Further questions?
Just a quick question here now regards, Minister, I'm not sure if it's your department or not, but something tells me that it is the Harvester Enterprise Loan Program. Your department? Help? Yeah. Your department?
I think we administer it, but it's an FFA program, I would say, but we have the infrastructure to be able to deliver it and deal with the financial parts of it. Similar to, I think there's a program in housing that we administered. We did, what else?
We did housing, we did
housing, we did the Labrador business stuff. So, you know, it's funny, sometimes it all comes to us because we have the people that can deliver it, but if you, so I can't get into a whole lot of it, but I'll try.
So the question is, so what has been the uptake this year? You know, how much money has been released, and I guess
Julian's definitely got the answers for that.
Yes, Julian Lidmer. So to date, we've approved 6 projects. The total funding approved is $3.86 million so far.
Any idea if any of that money is going to back to the fishery, small inshore fishing licenses, that type of thing? If there's been.
Julian Ludmer. Yes, so the funding goes to either purchase of licenses of fishing enterprises or of new vessels or repairs to existing vessels. So it's a mix.
So just a question, and if an individual, I guess the question is the process, because as my understanding is if someone goes to FFAW, they're just told that they don't. Not FFAW. FFA.
Yeah.
They get kind of pushed aside. So is it the individual's responsibility to come to IET, or is it, you know, there's a lot of discrepancies there?
Yes, Julian Ludmer. So the way the process works is the harvester first has to go to their financial institution, a chartered bank or a credit union. They apply for a loan and indicate that they want to avail of the province's supports. The financial institution then has to review that application and then come to IET. So it's the financial institution that comes to IET that then requests that the government provide a loan guarantee. And then as part of that application, the harvester will request the other assistance that the HELP program provides. And so then IET processes the application that comes from the financial institution. And then that's how then we go from there.
So would it be the harvester's responsibility to notify the bank that this program is out there, or is it would the banks already know? Is it? And just so we're clear, so we know, the line of question is coming from the fact that we've had small inshore fishermen and others who have gone to the banks and haven't even come to this process. It doesn't go any further. It dies on the vine. So.
Yes, Julian Ludmer. Yes, so we have spent quite a considerable amount of time since the program was launched educating financial institutions and credit unions around the province. We have spent hours speaking to head offices and branches as well, because we wanted to make sure they understand the program. And as well, we've offered numerous seminars for FFAW and harvesters to explain the program. So I think we're looking to do another round of those very soon now. But it's a constant education process to make sure everyone understands how it works and what their role is.
Yeah. I'm sorry, the Minister.
Just to follow up to that too, though, I would suggest if MHAs or people ever hear directly from people that would want to avail of this, don't ever hesitate to reach out directly to the department as well, and we can proactively do whatever we can to help or reach out. You know, we have no problem with that, but a lot of this too is like we can do so much, but at the end of the day, making sure every single bank employee is doing what they're supposed to be doing or supposed to have done. But the whole point, we want to get this out to help people.
Member for Terranova.
I'm going to jump into some subheadings here now. 2.1.01.
You don't want to wait. We'll just wait, if I may, and we'll If there's no further questions on this section, then we'll call that, and then we'll move into the next section. Correct? Do you want to recall? Any further questions, first of all, to this first section? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to recall those subheads.
1.1.01 to 1.2.03 inclusive.
Shall 1.1.01 through to 1.2.03 carry? All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? They carry. Thank you. Now call the next section. Subheads, please.
2.1.01 to 2.1.03 inclusive, mining and mineral development.
Shall 2.1.01 to 2.1.03 carry? I recognize the member for Terra Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2.1.01 under geological survey. Under transportation and communications, can the minister explain the savings under transportation and communications heading?
I'm going to try my best.
The Honourable the Minister.
I'll try my best, but thankfully Mr. Carter's behind me to pick up the slack. Actually, what happened there was we had less helicopter use than anticipated because all the resources went over to Lab West for the deployment during the fires. And I think that'll be a theme I come up with a couple of times here in response to that. Asked a question, but I didn't even realize this till going through it. That was the money we didn't spend is because we couldn't.
Was any portion of that money transferred over to other departments in order to pay for the helicopters?
The ADM Paul Carter.
So in terms of that savings, and to the Minister's point, you'll see this kind of trickling through all of the branches within the Mineral Development Division. So that money, and more particularly, there was, significant helicopter time that was planned for various surveys in Labrador, but also as well on the island of Newfoundland. And in terms of the Labrador projects, of course, priority being given to making sure necessary helicopters were available to support the evacuations and forest fire fighting efforts, in Labrador West and Churchill Falls regions over the summer. So, some of that money that was used or allocated in those persons was then, reallocated through other line items in the budget here to make use of the funding to support the critical mineral initiatives coming out of our critical mineral plan.
Member for Terra Nova.
Just a general question on helicopter usage there. A couple of years ago, I brought up here the fact that we had a Quebec company in knocking ice off the power lines for the Labrador Island Link and other lines up there. And full disclosure, in my previous life, I worked in the helicopter industry, and I can tell you right now, it's as simple as an SOP, and the helicopter companies that are in this province can do that work. Has Hydro made any effort to ensure that that work is carried out by Newfoundland? I mean, if we have contracts here with money allotted and budgeted for it, have we looked at doing the work ourselves, I guess?
The Deputy Minister.
John Cowan. My understanding is Hydro is using Newfoundland Labrador companies. They have made an effort to use those companies, but I will have to confirm.
Okay. All right, great.
Member for Terra Nova.
Professional services, there's more than $1 million overspend under professional services. Is there an explanation?
I can give you, sorry, Andrew.
The Minister.
I can give you the general, but then I'll defer to Paul to give you the detail. So the general is that it was the implementation of our critical minerals strategy, which applies to actually 2 or 3 lines there, some remote mapping, but I'll leave it to Paul to actually provide some meat on those bones.
Mr. Carter. Stand by. There you go.
Paul Carter. Yes, so some of this work that's showing up in that location refers to the Critical Mineral Geoscience and Data Program, where there were 2 geophysical surveys that were planned for Labrador. Some of the money associated with that program was derived from the federal government, approximately $1 million, and the timing of the money that came forward was a little bit later in the budget cycle. But what we have done, and the reason you do see that big increase in that particular cost category, is that that work has now been secured, the contracts are in place, and the work, the budgeting item for it is allocated in this year, but completion of the work will, be finalized in the upcoming year. So the $1 million and then the $665 million associated with that is what that increase is.
The member for Terra Nova.
Yeah, so I'll go back again. We were $1 million over budget, and if it was planned, and you would think that that money was part of the plan. So is it for plans going forward, or how did we go $1 million over is the question?
The Assistant Deputy Minister, Carter.
My apologies. Paul Carter. No, it's not an overspend. It's just a timing issue. The money was anticipated to be available, but when the federal funding money arrived, it was a little bit later in the cycle. It is a revenue that's captured, albeit it's not captured exactly in this particular category here for this, but it is a revenue.
Perfect. Thank you. Purchase services. There's more than $500,000 overspend in purchase services. Is there an explanation?
The ADM.
In terms of purchase services, sorry, Paul Carter, I apologize. It's my first time being actively involved in the questions here. In terms of purchase services, there was some money that was moved from transportation and communications, which was the unspent helicopter money that you alluded to earlier. And then what we did with that money, of course, was to use it to our benefit in terms of preparing and further progressing work related to the critical mineral geoscience AI activities that we're currently undertaking. So in terms of machine learning, programming data sets associated with geological information, purchasing of satellite multispectral data for interpretation purposes and those types of activities. So we took that money and made sure that we utilized it in terms of building out this critical mineral geoscience initiative that we announced in the Critical Minerals Plan.
Okay, thank you. The member for Labrador West.
Thank you, Chair. This past year, how many geological surveys were undertaken? I know you mentioned the Labrador one. And what are these geological surveys? What do they entail? Like, what kind of work are you doing with these particular surveys? Is it for any particular elements, or is it for a general survey?
The ADM, Paul Carter.
Yes, Paul Carter. So in terms of programs that are currently undertaken over the year, there were approximately 8 that occurred in Labrador, and similarly there were 12 projects that were taking place. So on the island we had various activities in terms of our mineral deposit section, our regional geology section, terrain sciences section, and geophysical surveys that were being conducted. And similarly in Labrador, we had various programs as well being undertaken.
Member for Labrador West.
Thank you. Can we get a, will the department be able to provide any more detail of the surveys or where they were located? Be able to provide that to us?
So I actually, if you look at the, I do have a map that shows where they are. So there's activity in nickel, gold, copper, and zinc activity taking place in around Hopedale, Makovic area. In respect of rare earth element examinations, we have activity in Red Wine District, Pope's Hill, and Strange Lake area in northern Labrador. In terms of some of the regional geology studies, we have activity taking place in central northern Labrador, west of Hopedale. We have activity in Harp Lake area of Labrador as well, which is somewhat similar to what I just mentioned. We're looking at the Ashwanapi complex in the Seal Lake group, which is a little bit north of Happy Valley Goose Bay, but a little bit to the west. And in terms of terrain sciences, we also have some activity in southern Labrador, Port Hope Simpson, and superficial sampling and mapping taking place in central North Labrador as well, north of Happy Valley Goose Bay.
Thank you.
Member Labrador West.
Thank you, Chair. So given all this work done there, can the department provide some update on the Julian RFP and the work that's being done there?
Paul Carter.
Yes, Paul Carter speaking. So with respect to Julian Lake, it is an initiative, of course, that we've been actively tying to our critical mineral plan and its implementation. Of course, the province's interest and the minister's activity in having high purity iron ore designated as a critical mineral within our provincial critical minerals plan. And of course, the province's advocacy as well with the Government of Canada also have it added to the Canadian critical mineral list. As part of our interest to advance iron ore and high purity iron ore development in the province, we did, of course, issue a call for expressions of interest for the Julian Lake iron ore deposit, which is a deposit where mineral rights are held by the Crown. We launched that process in late July, early August of this past year. The close for expression of interest was early December of 2024. We reviewed the applications that we did receive in terms of the expression of interest call. And of that call, we have now invited detailed proposals from various of the original submitters to the project. So that current process that's open will close towards the end of June, at which time we'll review any of the incoming proposals, ultimately with a view to enter into negotiations to look to see if we can finalize a development agreement for the Julian Lake project in Lab West.
Member for Labrador West.
Thank you, and thank you for that. From this past year, how many stakes, prospector stakes, have been done this past year? And has the prospector program have any improvements been made, or is it no improvements being made this year? It's going to be status quo.
Paul Carter.
Paul Carter.
So in terms of prospector assistance in our training and our programmings that we deliver, as you may recall, in earlier years, the program was set up in a manner with respect to prospector training where there was a 2-week course that one would have to complete, travel to the west coast to Stephenville, if I recall correctly, for a 2-week training activity, and then followed by a couple of days of actual in-field practicum. What we had observed was that with respect to that program, it was challenging for people to participate in, given the fact that they did have to actually physically travel to Stephenville to complete the work. But so we've now moved and worked with the College of North Atlantic to develop an online training program, which has had significant uptake in terms of participants. I think for last year there was approximately 52 participants who completed the program. And similarly, for the upcoming year, we already have 41 registered participants. So we're very, glad to see the numbers increasing, and prospectors, of course, being very important to the discovery of mineral resource opportunities.
Labrador West.
Thank you. And how many stakes were claims made this past year?
Paul Carter. In terms of claim staking this year, we have approximately, if you want to talk about the fiscal year, so approximately 31,257 claims. And in fact, approximately 10,000 claims were just staked by a company in Central Mineral Belt in Labrador, so that's very exciting.
Member for Labrador West.
Thank you. That's quite a few stakes this past year. Right now, given, I guess, that, is there any extra financial investment going to be made available to the prospectors this coming fiscal year?
Paul Carter.
Yes, absolutely. In our prospector assistance grants, ultimately there will be prospectors who apply, and generally we've been having that program fully subscribed, so we expect to see the same.
Labrador West.
For the junior miner development and that work, is there any increase into that budget this year?
Paul Carter. ADM Paul Carter.
Yes, sorry, if you could repeat the question. My hearing is getting a little bad as I'm getting older here. So.
No worries. For the junior minor and development program, is there any investment or anything in that this coming fiscal year?
Okay, Paul Carter. Yes, so in terms of our junior exploration assistance program, you know, it's been doing very well. It's intended, of course, to support the junior exploration community. In terms of some of the numbers of what we're seeing, and if you recall, as part of the provincial critical mineral strategy plan, we also added an additional $1.3 million to that back in 2023, commencing in 24. At present, we have approximately, for the year 24-25, 35 exploration projects were supported. And of course, within that, 26 primary critical mineral exploration targets and 9 others. So the full JEA budget was delivered. In addition to the 1.3 that I mentioned, of course, we also secured 1.3 million from the Government of Canada in terms of critical mineral focused activities, and also in addition to the 1.3 million that exists more broadly for junior exploration assistance. So if you think about what's happened here and what we've done, we now have, you know, approximately, and when you look at the breakout between, you know, a non-critical mineral versus critical mineral project, we've seen about a 200% increase since we've launched the additional 1.3 million in the critical mineral program coming out of the plan. So, you know, pretty excited about all that. A lot of activity and a lot of uptake in terms of this funding.
Member for Labrador West.
Thank you. Speaking of critical minerals, I was wondering if the ADM can elaborate on any work that's being done in Strange Lake this coming fiscal year.
Paul Carter.
Yes, thank you. So in terms of Strange Lake, it is currently very similar in similar in that it's an exempt mineral land, same as Julian Lake, if you will, where mineral rights reside with the Crown. In terms of the Strange Lake deposit, you know, we've had early conversations with the Nunavut government. Of course, the exempt mineral land is also a Labrador Inuit land under the Labrador Inuit Land Claims Agreement. You know, in terms of where we are with that, you know, there's still discussions that would need to be taken, but there does seem to be an interest in, you know, potentially the project being developed at some point in the future. You know, and ultimately as well, again, you know, this does tie back to, you know, in the earlier comments about value-added processing. You know, ideally, you know, it would be very important for us as a province as well that we'd like to be able to process that material as well, in addition to just extracting it. So, you know, we will continue those discussions. It's not prioritized right now for us in terms of our approach to exempt mineral lands, but it's one that's certainly in view, and that when we do have the alignment with the Nunavut government and interest to proceed, we'll certainly be looking to do some more. With that being said, of course, there is, you know, as I mentioned earlier, from the geological survey perspective, we're doing work in the area to better understand some of the you know, geoscience around it.
Done. Okay, sorry, the member for Terra Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2.1.02, mineral lands. Under salaries, there's an overspend in salaries. Is there an explanation?
The ADM, Paul Carter.
Yeah, so this is, you know, related to, and if you think about what's been going on in the province with respect to claim staking, you know, there's been significant claim staking occurring in the province over the last number of years. A significant portion of that, of course, being attributed to the ongoing gold exploration activity in central Newfoundland. As a result of when you do have these very large amounts of claim staking taking place, and it's been happening for the last number of years, additional staff were brought in to handle, process these applications, to follow up monitoring of exploration activities, the collection of fees associated with the monitoring associated with all of these activities, new quarry developments taking place, monitoring of quarries, permitting, renewals. So we did add additional staff to the department. It was done on a temporary basis, and but we're still working through, managing, if you will, the abundance of applications and that are necessary and the regulatory processes associated with them.
There was a $46,000 overspend under purchase services. Safe to assume that was a part of your previous answer?
Purchase services. Yeah, it is. So would you like for me, Minister?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. So, Paul Carter, the purchase service issue largely relates to our online payment system and fees that are associated with the service provider who does that. Not much different than any company, I guess, if you will, using a credit card, and there's a fee that has to be paid. So, that cost is a little bit higher, of course, because of all the new activity ongoing in terms of claim staking and processing of those applications. But we are, of course, looking at alternative methods and changing the service provider. So we do expect that those costs may come down, and looking at other mechanisms to deal with these types of applications.
For Terranova.
Last year, we passed new legislation with regards to just regular quarries, and I'm just wondering, and the Minister knows and the ZA knows for certain, we've had our share of troubles. But I will also say, from my experience, most of those troubles exist outside the department more so than inside the department, whether it's rezoning inside a municipality or applications not being filled out the right way, or other departments not upholding, I guess, their end when it comes to EAs and other things that have to happen. Hard to tell whether it works, and it's pretty early in the process, but have you guys found that this streamlining process is better, worse? Is there been an uptake in the sharing of quarries and those types of things that it was designed to do?
The ADM, Paul Carter.
I really apologize. If you could repeat the question again, because
I don't even know what I said.
that's why I asked you to repeat it.
The Minister.
I think the question was whether the Act has had any effect thus far on pouring process applications within the department. Like, what's the uptake and what's the feedback been so far?
ADM Paul Carter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you know, we are moving through the Quarry Resources Act and changes being made to it. Ultimately, we're working through some of the ministerial regulations right now based on the consultations and feedback that we've received, with a plan to get that proclaimed as soon as we can, assuming everybody is agreeable. The issues around quarries, it's a busy space. And if you think about, what we're doing, the province is doing with respect to new road infrastructure and plans for highways and these types of things, we are trying to build out the appropriate complement of persons to manage those, quarry applications, follow-ups and whatnot. But certainly it's very active. It's not without its challenges, no different than anything, but, we're certainly trying to get a grip on it and advance applications to the best of our ability. And, generally we do have some people who are very pleased. Sometimes you don't get, happy people. But you got to play by the rules.
If I got direct broadcast to the Minister, please.
So I could just follow up on that, just to put my thoughts out there. Coming at it as a person who, prior to being in the department, had no quarry involvement, didn't deal with it, just wasn't part of my life. So I come at it with no bias. What I can say is that the steel line from the former ADM, who's retired, and we wish him well, Alex Smith. Alex said a lot of times there was sort of a wild west feel to quarrying. And some of the complaints that have arisen come out of people not liking change and us having a resource and needing to protect it. I agree with what he said, and I also feel that there's no, and I appreciate the member's comments, like it's easy to blame one person or another person, but it's not. There have absolutely been cases where people inadvertently filled it out wrong, There are some cases where people have been, what's the word I'll use, slippery. There have been times when the department needs more information from other departments or has pushback from municipalities. There are times where, you know what, maybe we need to get on it quicker too. And we've tried to put in systems where if it's urgent road work or a current contract, let's get on it. And you'd be shocked at how many people come to you and say, I need this done right now. And then you're like, well, give me the project. And they'll give you a project. It's not, it's a finished project. I was like, what are you doing? Like, you know you're being an idiot here. And they're like, yeah, okay. You know, that's honest to God some of what we've seen. I've met with the associations, the different contractors. Like we want to be as responsive as we can. We try to be the best we can, and it doesn't mean we can't improve. But I think some of this too is evolutionary in nature, and that like people realize that it's not the same way that it was been. I know people are sitting back waiting to see somebody lose sight of one of theirs or pull up the paperwork and springing on that. I mean, it's a lot. It's been an eye-opening experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say that from my own experience, the general contractor that supplies sand or Class A, Class B, any kind of aggregate that forgets to renew their permit in January and all of a sudden it's an issue because they got to do work in May or June, it's their own fault. And you know, if there's a road going down to Beta Spear Highway and there's an inactive quarry that needs to be reactivated, then it becomes urgent. We get that.
Absolutely.
And from my experience, the minister knows, and certainly I'll go back to Mr. King. He's been a great help with projects and certain things we've had to have that were actually urgent, and it's worked out okay. The one complaint I would say, and I guess part of the question that I had, is that industry has had some, you know, before. As an example, I could go to someone and ask for a subordinate, and we could do the subordinate through the department, and it was mutually agreed upon and reported. And it seems as if now the new legislation puts a portion in where there's an expectation that the subordinate is going to be given, and it's not always going to be given. And I'll refer back to something I said when we were passing the legislation, is that you know, if Company A and Company B require a subordinate permit in order to excavate from a certain area, the Department of Transportation hasn't opened up their quarries in the same manner when it comes to subordinate permits. And I think that if government is going to insist that industry does that, then they have a responsibility to allow people to access those quarries too without taking the materials that they have processed.
My one comment to that is that's absolutely worthy of consideration within the department and the partners, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. I just want to go to, again, something me and the minister discussed in the past, and just because we're here and I'm out of subsection 2, but when it comes to mining, and this is broad, but I'm going to go right to current project that's on the go with regards to workers coming from out of province, and I know it's been an issue everywhere. I will offer a solution before I ask a question, and often we're accused of not offering solutions. So I would say the solution is this. If we have any project or any contract that we have with an outside entity coming in here for construction, and the thought is that it's going to be, and I'll just throw 90% as an argument, 90% employment locally, that 90% should be for each subcomponent of each contract that contractor lets out, not 90% overall, because what we're seeing are companies coming, and a great example is Gisborne are in here now, and they hire janitors and cooks and stuff in order to meet their manning mandates, and they're bringing mechanical outfitting people in from out west, and tradespeople in this province are left out high and dry. And if we are to succeed going forward, we have to find a way to push our apprentices forward and employ our journey persons and make sure that we are equipped with the people we need here. And there's a way to circumvent that number right now, whether we think there is or isn't. And we can oversee all we want, but they are, you know, they are hiring local when it comes to the lowest value jobs, and a lot of them are bringing in, and they have to bring in a certain amount of their own people. I get that. You know, this is how businesses succeed. But we should not have Boilermakers and you know, scaffolders and OEs and those types at home when there's people here from British Columbia working for that company. And I don't know how we fix it. Well, I do know how we fix it. I think my suggestion does fix it. But is there a plan going forward to look at doing things different, I guess, is my...
The Honourable the Minister.
I'll jump in first, and then, again, I can only speak from my level of experience, and I'll toss it over after. So there's the sort of the current, and then there's the going forward. And I think going forward, yeah, if that hasn't been a consideration, then we absolutely can have that conversation and see not what are the pros and cons, but what are the can we do's and what are the impossible to do's going forward. I have no problem taking advice on that. The current situation may be a little bit different depending on how the specific benefits agreement is written. Unfortunately, a lot of this is complaint driven. We can't do anything until people come forward. You're absolutely right in that people will try to slip one by every time. We've had that one recently where complaints were made. We've activated, and in fact, I think we've made a fix to what was brought to our attention. And I don't think you're ever going to fix that. That's no different than in policing. You can't have full-on policing deterrence all the time. It's impossible just with the resourcing, but that doesn't mean that we can't take it into consideration going forward. I mean, why not? If that's a solution, then we'd be silly not to strive to implement it. I don't know if John has anything to add to that. You don't have to.
The Deputy Minister.
John County, I would just agree with the Minister. I mean, you know, we certainly have a monitoring process in terms of like benefits and what companies and obligations that they're supposed to provide in the province. But certainly, if anyone sends in a letter, identifies an issue or a problem, every one of those have been investigated.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Given it's about halfway and we're at a break between speakers, I might propose a 10-minute recess. So we'll be back here at 10:46. How's that? Oh, okay, thank you. We're back in action with the estimates of IET, and turning to, where was I? The member for Labrador West.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And just, I guess, one last, question for this section, and probably for the ministers. Given that we have, we have two goal projects that are going to come on stream now in this fiscal year, we were talking about that. But is there any other projects or anything like that that are getting closer, or anything like that that the department is helping to move along? I guess we discussed search minerals. Is there any other projects that we should be aware of, or the government is working with to get to, I guess, to the point of development?
The Honourable the Minister.
So I'm happy to lead off, and then I again will defer to either the deputy or the assistant deputy minister, who might have, who do have a better recollection than I have. Obviously excited to see Calibre where they are now. If we're talking, that's one of the ones you let off with. And then Maritimes News, what they've been doing this year. And in fact, just getting a $20 million placement yesterday, or Sprott continues to be that was above and beyond where they thought they would be. And I can tell you that we worked especially close with both to try to get them there. Just down to nitty-gritty things, to even forming relationships with them and being able to talk about the things that we could do as a department. So there's times we can help, there's times that we just sort of had to provide that moral support. I mean, when you look in Labrador, obviously Lab West is one thing. If anything, there is just about the continued expansion of the opportunities. You don't need a lesson from me on that. You know it better than me. Obviously Julian Lake's a massive opportunity there. I think that the biggest thing, and then we look at search, hopefully getting back on track. Personally, I think the biggest thing that we can do there, there may not be anything that's active. I know there's, Strange Lake and uranium. And hopefully we'll see more of this. The big challenge we have is that when you have a budget like this, where healthcare continues to take massive amounts of money, road work, things like that, things we all want. But I believe Labrador has a ton of space that's not even looked at yet. We have to find ways to explore more prospecting, more exploration, you name it. I think Labrador is very underexplored from my experience, and I bet you would probably share that, and I know people in the department do. But it's always that sort of challenge of where do you put all the money? And I mean, I can make an argument that all the money should go in the department, and then it will generate that return. Right now, CFI down in Marystown, obviously we've had an active role there. Want to see where that goes. There's more in the central area in terms of Newfound and others. The name is escaping me now. The Cape Ray Gold Deposit used to be Omega now? Omega. So Omega, Southwest Coast, is absolutely positive, and is one that I've seen sort of firsthand myself, being down in that area. Firefly in Bayvert. Big moves going on there from the day where, I literally had to go to Bayvert the day that it closed, which was like, oh, you had to give this guest speech at the funeral, which was awful, to seeing where it is now. And so I credit them for their perseverance. What Sokoman and Benton are doing in terms of lithium on the southwest coast is a big, big opportunity there, and they've secured funding. American funding, exploration funding, which is what we want to see. There's a lot more going on. I've heard from, Triple Point, 999, Atlas over on the West Coast, Atlas, and what they're all doing there. They, multiple possibilities. I don't know if I've left out anything that's obvious. That's just the top of my head right now. I mean, if anything, mining, and I've said this in the House, mining does not often get the attention. It's that slow and steady, always there, sort of behind the scenes. Doesn't get as much attention as something new, but it's always reliable and has been and will be. But we have to continue to make sure that we invest properly in it and do what we can to nurture it along, because it still has a massive amount of future return on that. I mean, there's still a ton of prospectivity. There's still a ton of the product itself. Holy, he's telling me I got it all covered. There's nothing else.
It's good. Good.
Member for Labrador West.
Thank you, Chair. just, I guess, one last question for this section there is, can the minister or the ADM or DM provide just an update on the, our liabilities with closed and, I guess, abandoned mines?
The member for Paul Carter.
Yes, in terms of orphaned and abandoned mines, of course, these are mines that are now defunct and operators are no longer around in the province. They can range from, some with some significant liabilities, others that are, much smaller in nature. It could be, a exploration site, by way of, for an example. In terms of liabilities that are on the books, the number, I believe, is around 100 million. And it is associated with two larger legacy issues in the province with respect to consolidated Rambler tailings and some of the past workings in Buckins area. So they're the two main ones.
Thank you. That was my final question.
And now I'll ask the member for Terranova.
Just a couple of more questions, I guess, related to mining. So earlier I asked a question with regards to electricity, specifically with search, but the minister just covered a whole lot of potential here in the province. I mean, a massive amount of potential. And I would argue, and again, he and I have had this conversation, that a lot of people think that oil and gas is our future, and I'm one of those people, but I also believe that our mining sector is second to nowhere in the world. And when I asked about electricity, I guess the response was search hasn't come to us. But and I know the world knows we're open for business, but I still think with the Churchill Falls MOU, the CF2, the new turbines coming for Churchill Falls itself to expansion. When you look at the issues in Goose Bay and the issues in Labrador West with regards to power and the ability to expand, and you look at what's happening in Fairmont and what they've managed to do because of our electricity, I know that these negotiations are separate and being done by different people, but I can't stress enough how important I think it is for us to gain access to extra electricity prior to 2031. And I'm wondering if that has been a part of the conversation, because people coming to us asking for power is one thing, but the ability, we know that we can utilize that power tomorrow if it's there, whether it's Labrador West or anywhere, or Goose Bay or anywhere. But search, as an example, or other places, knowing that we have the ability to provide clean, green energy is very enticing to them. And timing is everything, I guess, right?
The minister.
So I'm going to take a shot at it, and then, of course, I'll leave it to the crowd to clean up the mistakes. So we've been aware of it, and that's why we had, working with Hydro, the transmission line study. Prior to Churchill Falls MOU, we had already begun that work to see, because we knew there was power demands, but trying to sift through what's real and what is not. And as I think we said before, I think we had about 8,000 megawatts of people say we want this. And then we went back and said, okay, we're going to do the study. And then, but it's going to cost you to do the study. And then it was like, went down to like 2,000. I would suggest that we're already there. We're already looking at that, having those conversations. And then Churchill, which is happening parallel, comes along. Couple things I would toss in the mix. Some of them are tossing in their own green generation opportunities. That's part of the plan going forward, looking at wind, looking at things like that. The other thing that I keep getting told, and I'm open to, like, put it this way, I have no problem exploring transmission, generation, whatever, like access prior to the current scenario. It'll be on somebody else. But a lot of them keep telling us that the timelines fit well with their proposition as it stands. Like, even if, like, search is at the point now, 2025, where like they're just getting themselves back up to where they should have been probably 2-3 years ago. It probably ties in with the conversation now. I mean, I'll defer to the crowd here if I missed anything else we should add. But I think it ties in now. If someone walked in the door tomorrow and said, listen, we have this massive new opportunity, we hadn't talked to you about it before, let's have this conversation, then we will always put ourselves into solution mode of finding how we can make something happen or figure something out. And we've done that before, but right now we haven't been pressed with that. Not saying it's not there, and not saying we wouldn't do it, but that's just sort of where we find ourselves at the moment. Good?
Okay. Member for Terranova.
So again, I'll go back to the mining industry and I'll say, you know, obviously the chaos, the mayhem. I won't say what I want to say about Donald Trump, but the things that we have been dealing with. So Labrador in particular, but Newfoundland and Labrador provide an awful rare opportunity for us to be not just leaders in North America, but global leaders when it comes to rare earth minerals. And you know, I'm not certain that a lot of people would understand when I say, when we look at, you know, the shield that surrounds Labrador and makes our rare earth minerals so much more valuable when it comes to uranium and iron ore, you know, protecting any water getting near them and the things that are required. Has there been any conversation, I guess, with the feds? I would argue it's the feds that would have to do it, but as a rule, I mean, from a provincial standpoint, rare earth minerals are the key to Arctic sovereignty and to military defense on many levels going forward, whether it's for Canada or for the United States. But from a negotiating standpoint, we've seen what the U.S. has tried to do with the Ukraine in order to access their rare earth minerals, which are nowhere near what we can supply. Have we utilized that to the potential that we could as a bargaining chip with regards to tariffs and other things?
The Minister.
So this is not new to me. As I said, having gone to a place like New York last year, meeting with, you know, pretty significant investors. Like one of the guys we met with was on Trump's first transition teams. A guy who works for like BlackRock type people, like just massive, massive money people, but also they have one goal there, which is just to win. I have no doubt they have thought about that up here. They know what's going on. There's a reason they're looking at Greenland. There's a reason they're looking at the Arctic, and there's a reason we are on their map as well. There haven't been a lot of conversations with the feds recently on it because, in fairness to them, I mean, they're so caught up in the show that is up there. Like, you take the political side of it with an election and a leadership and all that, and then you throw in the tariff conversation and everything else. I'm not saying it's not going on, but we have always sat here saying that we're willing to engage in that conversation. We have what the world needs. And in fact, we continue, like I would wager a guess that we spent a lot of our time over the last few years doing exactly that, going out and telling people what we have, trying to get us on the map because it's hard. But yeah, I mean, I would suggest we need to get the political uncertainty in Ottawa out of the way right now. And some of that will be gone come the end of the month. They get an election, whoever it is, like hopefully we just come in and get back to getting stuff done. But the other side is that what's going on down south, I have no doubt that's what they have their minds on. Okay. No doubt.
I'm done with subheading 2.
Okay,
so if we
thank you. No further questions. I'd ask the clerk to recall that subhead, please.
2.1.01 to 2.1.03 inclusive.
Shall 2.1.01 through to 2.1.03 carry? All those in favor? Against? It's carried. Now ask the clerk to call the next subheading.
3.1.01 to 3.1.09 inclusive energy development.
Shall 3.1.01 through 3.1.09 carry? The member Terranova.
Any of the on-land wind energy proponents submitted community benefits plans yet? Or have there been ongoing conversations with regards to community benefits agreements? Or
the Honourable Minister.
Yeah, okay, so I thought. None have submitted yet, so we haven't had a chance to have a crack at that. It will have to come before they get anywhere sanctionable, we'll say. Craig might have some detail.
Craig Martin.
Craig Martin. So we have been in contact with all of the proponents. There have been discussions going back and forth. we have communicated with all of them in terms of what the elements and the expectations for benefits agreements are going to contain in that. In terms of the levels of engagement, they vary by project depending on how far progressed the projects themselves are at this point in time. Again, we've got some projects out there with actual offtake agreements in place. We've got others that are still not progressing as quickly as they had originally anticipated. So it's a mix there in terms of where they actually are from a total progression perspective, but no benefits agreements actually executed at this point in time.
Member for Terranova.
So the expectations have been passed on to the proponents. Can those expectations be tabled in the House, or is it something that we can be aware of, or is it confidential? Or?
The Minister.
Yeah. What I would suggest before I say yes, we'll take it away, and if we are able to, I can. Like, I have no problem putting what our expectations are. Yeah. But it also may evolve and change. I mean, what it is today may change because there's that much flux going on. But if there's anything I can put out, I'd be happy to put it out so people sort of know where we're coming from.
Okay.
Terranova.
Under 3.1.02, supply saw an overspend of $385,000. Is there an explanation?
Supplies, I think, and Craig might have more, this had to do with the natural gas resource assessment project and software maintenance. There might be some accounting stuff in there, so I'll leave it to Craig to provide the detail.
Craig Martin.
Craig Martin. So yes, that's where the Petroleum Geoscience Division sits. So what you're going to see there's one-time money there in 24-25 for the natural gas resource assessment phase 1 that was undertaken and just literally very recently completed from a technical perspective. Then in 25-26, you're going to see actual new one-time money. So you'll see that one-time money coming out, but you'll see new one-time money coming in for the approval of the phase 2 in the budget that was announced yesterday. So what you're going to see there is funding was put in certain categories, but in terms of where the actual expenditures hit, some of them would have hit in other areas, like monies might have been put in professional services, but when we actually went out and bought our Petrel software, it was a purchase service, so the monies had to be reallocated across the categories. So that's really what you're seeing in this account overall in terms of the changes, is one-time money each of the years in order to support those specific projects.
Member for, okay, oh, I'm sorry, the member for Labrador West.
Thank you, Chair. Is the Minister be able to update us on any the potential for the sale of oil and gas assets that are held by the province? Can the Minister give us an update on where that's to right now?
The Minister.
So absolutely. It's not the definitive answer, but I can sort of give you where we are. There has not been the final decision made yet. There has been a process undertaken for the purpose of determining what is the value, and then a decision can be made. So we're just not at that decision point yet, whether it's the sale of equity in the current projects, the prospect of equity in Beta Nord, as well as the sale of Oilco. My thoughts are this, and this is my thoughts, not necessarily departments or governments. The sale of oil and gas equity carries more than a dollar figure with it. It also carries with it a perception. And so I've been clear that if we were to ever divest of the equity that we have, you want to have your socks blown off with the numbers. You want them to be big, because some people will look at it and not see a business decision, but see you giving up on an industry. And I'm very hypersensitive to that ever since getting in here, because you become cognizant that even the slightest thing can stir emotions in people directly and indirectly connected to the industry, going right back to when there was that rally out on the steps. So what I would suggest is this, is that it's not just a pure business decision. So whatever, if this government or some government makes that decision, I do think they have to carry that as, you know, if you're looking at the numbers better be big. And the other thing too is sometimes the process, you're doing the process at the same time that the changes going on globally and geopolitically move faster than you can actually do the analysis on it as well. I mean, just looking at the market the last 2 weeks, and the prices and everything else, it's all over the place. So no decision as of yet. I don't know if that timeline is on. I know the analysis was done or was being done or should be done. That's probably the best I can put out now. I don't know if I've missed anything.
Thank you, Minister.
Member for Labrador West.
Now, now I guess moving to the next industry there with that, as now with the green hydrogen, wind hydrogen projects and stuff like that, I know a lot of them are tampering expectations now. We've seen a downgrade in the possible revenue made. We've heard stories over in Germany where there was some criminality and stuff going on over there with some of their funding and stuff for those projects. I was wondering if with the department internally, have you guys adjusted your projections and stuff for these projects and the possible output or revenues that can possibly be generated, given that the world's thing for it all has tampered a little bit.
The Minister.
The most we might do is feed into the budget process if there was any change there based on what the proponents are telling us. But to be quite honest, it hasn't given me a tremendous ton of concern, because at all points I think we have been very rational about this and not getting caught up in the hype, not getting caught. That doesn't mean we don't get excited, but I mean, even going back 3 years, I would tell people, this is exciting, but don't think it's Hibernia exciting. It's not the same. It's different things. I think some of the proponents themselves, in particular, certain ones in particular, have been guilty of causing a lot of the hype. I think federal governments, ours and others, have estimated or sort of put that out there, put these timelines in that were super ambitious at best. And they weren't shared by all the proponents. Sometimes, too, you get caught up in this movement where everybody's talking about first mover. Everybody wants to be that first mover, get there, get in the supply chain and get everything else, and that causes other people to move, and then the reality is that the other side's not ready. Offtake is still an issue because we need to figure out, what is the consumer willing to pay for that. Overall, I still feel very good. Our biggest thing is that we accepted projects based on certain parameters, and we're willing to change the parameters, but as long as it doesn't affect the materiality of the project and the criteria for which they were selected. But we're also cognizant, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, no industry involving resources starts off flying. You have to crawl before you run, and this one is no different, and we're willing to be patient. I do feel sometimes that the scrutiny that they get is frustrating from people that are against it. There's some people that are against it and have valid questions. There are some, doesn't matter what you say, they are there. And like I say, given the fact that, oil faced challenges like that decades ago, and it wasn't until people like Crosby and Maroney took a chance. And in that case, that was a massive investment of taxpayer dollars. We haven't even made that massive investment. So I'm willing to give them a chance, and I'm willing to put out that it's a great opportunity for the province, but that doesn't mean we won't keep an eye on it and protect ourselves all along the way.
Labrador West.
And I know one proponent was even talked about switching from hydrogen to powering data centers or anything like that. Would that change their whole scope of anything, or would that department like that? Because it seems like it's kind of...
I'll be as diplomatic as I can be. Still ain't nothing on my desk about that. So as far as I'm concerned, it is what it is. I would just say, though, some people sometimes make comments, and they don't realize that other people might be interested in those comments, and they probably shouldn't make those comments.
Perfect. Thank you, Minister.
Member for Labrador West.
Thank you.
Labrador West.
Thank you. Can we get an update on the renewable energy plan? I know there's a second phase. I guess this should be updated soon.
I'll gladly turn it over to Susan, who has better insight than I do.
Susan Wilkins.
Susan Wilkins. Hi, thanks for the question. So we're currently in our 4th year of the 5-year plan. We've made significant progress over the first 3 years with the establishment of the renewable energy industry. Just some highlights from this past year. We did release the Hydrogen Development Action Plan last May, so we're working through that. That's a 3-year plan. We've got the 6 companies going through the regulatory process in government, and we're supporting that. We've also launched the Regional Energy and Resource Table with natural resources. Those are just some key examples from 2024, but I'd be very happy to sit down if you wanted to go through any more detail.
Labrador West.
Thank you. I appreciate that from the ADM there. How much is government, right now would be, I guess, our liability for any orphaned or abandoned wells or anything like that right now? Where are we with that?
Craig Martin.
Craig Martin. So I don't have that number with me here now, but generally I know there's one orphaned and abandoned well on the island at this point in time that we are currently overseeing. The company itself is likely there'll be no recovery, but we're still working through that particular piece in terms of the company itself as to where it would see it. In terms of the offshore area, that would all be under joint regulation with respect to the board and that. So when we talk about orphaned and abandoned wells here in this circumstance, it would be solely what's within the land portion of the province, either on the island or Labrador.
Perfect.
Labrador West.
Yeah, perfect. That's what I was referencing, was the ones that out on the west coast there. Is there any, I guess we the honourable member from Terra Nova mentioned it a bit there too as well, but with the natural gas plan, I guess, I guess you get attached to that, but when can we see any timelines on some of that work that's coming from the department on, I guess, release of the so-called plan or the work that's being done?
The Honourable Minister.
I'm saying soon, as in hopefully real soon. I look back at Tansy because she might even know better than me, but I wanted it soon. It just didn't time in with the budget yesterday and the announcement of Phase 2. But what I would say is Phase 1 was good enough that we went and got the money for Phase 2. So it is good news, and can't wait to get it out there. But got to figure out a few things. But hopefully, I'm talking like soon.
Craig Martin. Craig Martin.
Craig Martin. Now, in terms of, again, as the Minister indicated, the resource assessment Phase 1 is completed. The technical report that was done by the Geoscience Group is completed as well. What we're trying to finalise at this point in time is a public report, actually taking the technical data and reporting out on it.
Okay, perfect.
Labrador West.
Thank you, Chair. And I guess with the the so many benefits agreements or definitive agreements out now with the MOU coming out. What is the province, I guess the department's role now in the negotiation side of things? Where is there assets allocated from the department itself to work on this as well?
Craig Martin.
Craig Martin. So in terms of the benefits plan with respect to the MOU, and that would have already existed under the existing one that covered both Muskrat Falls and the Gull project. There may be some refinement within it as such in terms of how they deliver on it, the details, but all the elements and general commitments already all exist.
Labrador West.
I was talking about the negotiations themselves. Is the province themselves part of the negotiation, or have their assets allocated for the negotiation?
Back to the Minister.
This is primarily led by Hydro and the committee, with us and Finance providing support to them, but they are the lead on it.
Okay, thank you. And I'll turn to member for Terra Nova.
Just a quick question on abandoned wells. And this is just my brain. I think it works a little different than most people's. So the whole idea that we may have an abandoned well, or we will have multiple abandoned wells, also opens up the new legislation that we just passed for Atlantic Accord with adjacency and another company's ability to come in and take advantage. So has anyone looked at any parallel assets in association with abandoned wells and our ability to utilize them to access other well at a much cheaper rate?
Yeah.
Craig Martin.
There has been some recent interest, not from an oil and gas perspective, but actually interest in naturally occurring hydrogen and utilizing existing wells. So we have had we've had two companies actually approach us on that from a concept perspective, as opposed to definitely wanted to take over a well practical perspective at this point in time. So that is something that is being looked at, but however, we do have to establish a regulatory regime for that, and that is something we're looking at right now, because the product It's an actual mineral at the end of the day from the perspective of meets it under the Mines Act, but the regulatory regime associated with it would be completely different than mining. So that piece has happened. It's percolating there at this point in time, but it's not to the stage where there's anybody actively looking at moving in on one of these wells.
Member for Terranova.
And I'll just go back to electricity, I guess, availability. And I'll be the first to say I understand some of the abandoned pits in Labrador West, but I don't know what we have throughout the rest of the province. But in other jurisdictions, they're utilizing abandoned pits to create hydroelectric facilities, reflooding and recirculating the water in order to produce electricity. Has anyone looked at that as an option here?
The Deputy Minister.
John Cowan. So we haven't been approached on that, like pump storage, but I mean, certainly from a government perspective, we're open to any opportunity to support the grid certainly from a capacity, primarily capacity perspective, but energy perspective as well. So like pump storage is very, pumped water, pumped air are all very interesting opportunities that the department would be happy to explore. So, but not on pumped water.
Yeah,
Member for Terranova.
I'll get back into the line items really quickly now in a second, but just one other question. There was some announcements made yesterday that the department had made, multiple announcements with regards to investment in oil and gas, offshore and everything. Some of them look to me as if they would have parallel symmetry with funding that could come from the PRNL. Am I wrong in saying that? Like some of the exploration and technical stuff, there's always funding available. Is this in conjunction with money that they would put out? Is it the same money or?
The Honourable Minister.
I'll just say it's not hitting me that way. That's not where my mind is.
Okay.
It's not like the aha moment here. And I'm looking at Craig and John, and I don't think it's.
What was the question? I mean,
it's the funding announcements yesterday for offshore, not just exploration, but there were some for technical upgrades and different stuff. And like a lot of that money is accessible through PRNL. So are we doubling up on something? Is it, you know?
No.
The oil and gas companies pay a royalty to PRNL for every liter that comes out of the ground in order for us to do further exploration.
I don't.
The Minister.
I don't think that's the case in this particular scenario.
And I'm asking, you know, when we talk specifically about carbon capture, you know, we know for certain that, and PRNL may not agree with me, but that money doesn't always get spent wisely or spent at all. You know, the money, there's always an abundance of money in there, and the same players find a way to access the money all the time. And I'm just wondering if there is duplication of funding.
Yeah.
The Minister.
Yeah, and this CCUS, I think we had $6 million. I think we've spent about $3 million. We're trying to spend it, but like there's that case of trying to get it out the door versus making sure, like you say, it's not just tossed out.
Yeah, all right. Under 3.1.04, salaries was underspent last year, and it's increased this year. Is there a reason?
Two reasons, Andrew. Two reasons. One being we had some vacancies trying to get people in. This year the variance would be like there was nobody gone. We'll make sure positions are filled, and there was the routine salary adjustments and negotiated salary increases. So I think the complement should be the same. Two new benefits. Two new benefits positions for renewables.
Okay. Yeah. There was an announcement yesterday, $90 million increase for exploration over 3 years. How much of that funding is available this year?
The Minister.
So that's from 2026 onwards, none for this year, which was at the request of Energy and other people we talked to. So we said we would get it out the door this year because we're already looking at 26. So it's 26, 27, 28.
So in year one, I guess. Sorry.
Year one will be 30.
Okay.
As it stands. And, you know, I think I said this yesterday, like, you know, looking at the current cost of a well, you know, I mean, that could be 25%, which my conversations with some of these companies that are exploring the possibility is that would work well with them and their shareholders.
So, you know, first out the gate, I guess we'll have that conversation. So if there's an abundance of applications that exceed the 30 and go to 90, would we consider spending all that money in year one?
The Minister.
I'm absolutely not opposed to trying to figure out opportunities to take, ways to take advantage of current opportunity rather than saying, no, I'm waiting for something that might not come along. Obviously, I'd have to have a conversation with the Minister of Finance, but what I would suggest is she was very, very supportive of this. I'm a believer in take what you can while you can if it makes sense, and rather than wait and who knows, nobody comes in the door and we let an opportunity go by.
So I'm making an assumption here when I ask the next question, and I would think the department had some dealings with the projection of crude oil forecast for this fiscal year to supply the finance department. When was that I guess assumption made? What are those prices? What's the date they were based on?
Craig Martin.
Craig Martin. So in terms of the actual production forecast, costs, things like that for the that's utilised in the budget, the department normally works with CNLOBB, and we provide the Department of Finance with those types of numbers. The actual oil price assumptions are done by the Department of Finance.
Okay, I'll just go back to the 90 million. So it's in this year's budget. The funding is for next year. Is there a cabinet OC oversight to make sure that money is there for next year?
A budget appropriation.
The minister.
There would be a budget appropriation. I don't know if there's an OC necessarily, but now that we have it out there,
yeah,
you can be guaranteed it's there to be used.
You're not going to lose it. Okay. 3.1.05 grants and subsidies. There was an underspend of more than 11 million last year in grants and subsidies. Is there an explanation as to why?
What's the heading again?
3.1.05.
Oh, this is the one. You go ahead. Was that Julian or Heather?
Heather.
Heather?
Heather Tizard.
Heather Tizard. That's just some projects under our IBDF funding didn't proceed as quickly as we thought they would. So some took longer, planning, site development. So we carried that funding over to next year's.
Okay.
Member for Terranova.
So I guess that's the answer to there's considerable savings, and there isn't actually savings. That money will be spent this year, is fair to say?
Heather Tizard.
Yes, any project funding that wasn't spent this year is carried over to next year's.
3.1.07, I guess it's a great place to ask whether or not there's any possibility of an update on the Beta Nord project.
The Honourable Minister.
This is probably one of the top questions I get, and I don't have anything specific I can share here. Except to say that there's been fairly active conversations going on since Christmas, to the point where both teams, I would say, like leadership in terms of like myself and the deputy and team and the country manager and their team all together in the same room, forming a relationship. And we have formed a relationship where we can be honest and frank and forthright with each other about expectations. Then it goes to, and I wouldn't quite say weekly, but very regular communication between the two teams. As it stands, I mean, it's that sort of balance between Equinor will continue to tell you that they have to make it meet IRR expectations back in Norway. And I would point out, my opinion is that there's a difference between the crowd operating in Norway and the crowd that's operating here. I have full faith that they want to get this done, but there's pressures. We've made it quite clear that we want to see a project. We'd love to see a project. We'll do anything to have a project, but not quite. We are not a project at all costs, and there are expectations from different stakeholders, whether it be an opposition, labor, the province itself, and we have to keep those in mind, because once you get past the actual numbers, there's the numbers and then there's the perception of the numbers. We made really great progress the last time before the sort of rug was pulled out from under. Very, very good progress. There's still work to be done here because it went back to the drawing board. We all know that. So I still feel optimistic. I still feel that something can happen. We continue to work towards that. I would not put a timeline on that, nor do I think it's fair. I mean, we're not in a rush. I know that they internally might have their decision gate timelines and things like that. That's on them. We could theoretical sign off on it tomorrow. It's not anywhere near that, don't get me wrong, but we're also in no rush. We need to think long term and best value for the people.
Thank you. The member for for Labrador West.
Yeah, thank you. Just one question there on under 3.1.05. The money what projects were this money used to fund for out of this pot of money?
3.1.05?
Yeah.
And that's IBDF. So Heather, did you have?
Heather Tizard.
Sorry, could you repeat the question? Were you asking about specific projects?
Can you please provide a list of what projects were used? This money was used for.
Well, it's a number of projects for innovation and business development. There's projects for Secor. The Argentia Port Authority is a big project. Holyrood Marine Base, R&D, as I mentioned, at Secor. So those types of projects.
All right, perfect. That's my final question there.
Okay, thank you. The member for Terranova.
3.1.08 Oil and Gas Co. They've been reduced by $2 million. I assume that's staffing, or is there an explanation?
Craig Martin.
Craig Martin. That's their annual capital budget there at that point. So what they had there for last year, they have some money there specifically in order to do roof repairs out there at the site. So they're fiscalized with us, but they actually operate on a calendar year. So from a $4 million perspective, which was allocated there, that money was drawn by them last year in terms of our fiscal year, but still their current calendar year. So they're moving forward to get that work done at this point in time. Then the $2.1 million is their capital budget for this year, which is to finalize seismic work that they've already had previously done.
Okay.
Member for Terranova.
Just a question, and I know there was one asked earlier, but I think this is a little different. Obviously, there's a thought that Oilco may be sold or the assets sold, that type of thing. So I guess in a broad scope, Oilco gets sold. I would assume employees that are there may go with it, and that's fine. But the province has significant investment and ownership of all the seismic data, and that data is still very key going forward. Would we retain that data, or is that something that would we lose proprietorship over that?
The minister.
Yeah, that would be a part of the negotiation. Value belongs to the province, so if that were to go, there would be a price tag to go along with that. It would not. It's something that we retain, like you said, proprietary ownership, but we have not. That's not a conversation we've had recently.
Okay. 3.1.09. What's the purpose of the $300 million loan for hydro that is included in this year's budget?
0.09 on energy initiatives?
Yep.
Okay, so no, the question is not related here. The question is for the money for hydro, right?
Yeah, $300 million for hydro.
So when Craig Martin looks at me like that, then I start to wonder. So 300 million for hydro. Where's this to again? Just so we know, the 3.1.09, this was the placeholder for Ogira when we had that federal funding, the 320 million, but that's just more of a placeholder. That's the budget. Is that the budget highlights?
Questions in the wrong spot. Most of them are coming from here, but some of them are down here.
You're doing good, man. You're doing good.
I'll stick to the head. Yeah, okay. They're all grouped, yeah. Just so they're all grouped under that heading, so it's not part of that heading. So we'll just say the $300 million loan to hydro is for capital investment, I guess, or
$300 million loan. Like, there's a bit of we're not following estimates. Page 7. Page.
We can move on, and someone else can look for it.
I tell you what, we'll,
for the sake of time.
We'll give ourselves on. Somebody will figure that out. You keep at it.
Yeah, because we want to get.
Yeah.
Just a general question, I guess, because, and I know, I mean, the money is coming from lots of different pots, I would assume. There's been a lot of work put into Churchill Falls MOU. Has there been any indication as to how much money has been spent to date on that process?
I would assume there is. I don't necessarily know if it is with us or if it is with the Premier's office or finance, do we? Or with Hydro and JPS. So I agree that there's definitely a figure. Just because of the expertise that's been hired alone, there would be a big figure. I just don't know who would hold it, and I don't think it falls within any of our budget lines. Am I right?
No, it does not.
The Deputy Minister.
Yeah. On your question on the 300 million, so we're still not sure. So we think
smarter, stronger, better.
Right. My understanding is a question for finance.
Okay, but under smarter, stronger, better, page 25, statement C, on lending program, Newfoundland Hydro, $300 million.
We'll have to look into it.
We'll look into it, but you might want to bring it up when you do the finance estimates too.
Yeah. So to stay with funding for the Upper Churchill Oversight Committee, is that coming from your department? Okay. What is the intention of Corner Brook Pulp and Paper Power Purchase Agreement once it reaches its expiry?
The Minister.
The perpetual question. It'll have to be a decision when it comes to, which if it's not already here, it's coming soon. Yeah. It will have to be a decision of government of whether to continue on or do you continue on? Do you not continue on? And if you do continue on, is there some kind of alteration? So not a thing I can discuss here today because that decision has not been made. Okay. But it's one of those ones where it's always an interesting conversation.
Member for Terranova.
Is there a timeline for the Buckins Generation Station Assessment divestment?
Buckins, is it? So that's more of a growler question. They are now working, I think, now that we've got this part done, they can continue on with the feasibility study. So I don't know if the timeline is there. They would make that decision. We've just signaled our willingness to go along, and we're fine with that.
And I know I asked the question earlier, but obviously throughout any negotiation or anything that any business or government does, there is timelines set. So with regards to Bull Arm, like, is there some kind of a broad timeline where we hope to resolve this, or is it just day to day?
So what I would say is technically no, but at some point there will be a decision by government. Do you continue on here? I can't tell you what that is. It's one of those things you can come down on either side. There's a part of me that says you can set an artificial deadline, and does that really get you to where you need to get? Because sometimes these deadlines don't have the effect that you want them to have. But at the same time, you could say, well, if you don't put in a deadline, people just fool around, and are continuing to waste value. I don't feel we're at that point yet because we're just getting to the point where the companies have gotten us their proposals. We got to work through them, and we need to extract more value. Plus the fact that there's other things that have come along where new ideas have come along. Do they fit into current proponents' ideas? And like they're big enough that, like you say, I think we mentioned this earlier. You know, are they real? Hopefully, if not, move along. But they're worthy of conversation.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is the right place to ask the question or not, but with regards to the refinery, and I know there's a misconception out there about the 5 cents and what that does, and I get it. So I'll go back to what I said earlier about us importing fuels from Quebec to power thermal generation throughout the province. We're losing out on that 5 cents there while the general public is paying it. I know right now there's a thought that we're going to switch to hard aviation fuel versus renewable diesel, based on, you know, the whole thought of shipping it around the globe and all the stuff they should have thought of before they started it. But anyhow, I'm happy to see people working out there. Has there been any discussion with the current proponent about bringing the platformer back up online so we can produce some of our own fuels here in the province again? And I'll add, I don't think so. Most people in the province don't understand the shortages that we may or may not face on a daily basis and the potential for catastrophic shortage at some point, which would affect us in a dire way. So is it something that and listen, I'm not suggesting that we invest a pot of money into something, but we need to look for a way to.
What I would suggest, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, I can speak on behalf of what the province knows. We haven't had that conversation. If it were to come to us, of course I'll consider anything, especially, I mean, that's not a problem. And then it comes down to, obviously, it's a money question. I can't tell you whether that's been a conversation between the proponent and their lenders especially in light of the significant investment that they've already made, and then they sort of have the tax credits change and everything else. My understanding is that they're concentrating on going down the road of where they already are, plus acting on the SAF route. So it's not like we would sit there and say no, but is that somewhere where they want to go, and what would that result in? I can't tell you whether they've done the internal work on that.
Okay, and I'm good with section 2.
Okay, seeing no further questions, I ask the clerk to recall this subhead.
3.1.01 to 3.1.09 inclusive.
Shall 3.1.01 through to 3.1.09 carry? All those in favor? A. Thank you. Against? Carried. Now call the next subhead.
4.1.01 to 4.3.01 inclusive, business and innovation.
Shall 4.1.01 through to 4.3.01 carry? All those. The member for Terra Nova.
4.1.02, loans and investments, there's an increase of $34 million. Can you explain what the funding is for and why the increase?
So I can try to
Tell me when
explain.
this is over.
So as you can see there, we've always had an investment attraction fund on an annual basis. Right now, there are conversations ongoing that I cannot discuss yet. There's been nothing signed, nowhere, but they're to the point where we were able to inform finance so they could fit it in now, rather than the alternative where sometimes the conversation comes along after the budget's baked and you got to go out and figure out where it is now. So I can't say that the usage of this amount will come to fruition, but it's there in case we need it, and it's for multiple things. So I can't discuss it now because it's still that negotiation, and I don't want to put us in a bad spot. It would also, though, include round 3 of VNL, Venture Newfoundland Labrador, so it's the continuation of that project, which from all accounts since its inception in 2014, early 15, has worked out quite well with having a private crowd, intermingle of funds, take ours, and we're getting a great return since that time.
Member for Terra Nova. Oh, I'm sorry, member for Labrador West.
Oh, thank you. Perfect. Yep. So under that, I guess part of the question there for under 4.1.02 of that, what projects were funded in the past year under that program, and can we get a list of those? Yeah.
The Mr. Ludmer.
Yes, Julian Ludmer, thank you. So primarily our support for the various venture capital funds that we support comes out of this funding. So they make capital calls throughout the year to make investments in new companies or follow-on investments. In the past year, there were 10 investments made in either new or existing companies by the VCs that we're contributing to. There were additional contributions that came out of this pot also to make repairs to the Atlantic Cable facility. There were a couple of expensive repairs that had to be made in the past year. So those were the main portions of that funding.
Member for Labrador West.
Thank you. What kind of, for this coming year, I guess usually there's sometimes things that are in particular that government wants to invest in, but this year, I guess, could the minister elaborate on what kind of things that this government plans on, like projects and stuff that they're looking at that are, I guess, in the realm of what the budget's trying to think, like things I know, like sometimes there's different things. What is the government looking at, or are you guys looking at investing in this year?
The minister.
I was just making sure there's nothing specific I could put out there. We're open to anything across the gamut in terms of, investing that attraction. That's why we come up with different programs, because it is, there's an Atlantic competition, then there's a Canadian competition, and there's the competition outside of that. So we like where we have the fund. The problem is, I know it's not a good answer, I just can't get into it because you threaten the negotiation, put yourself in a bad spot, and just generally doesn't look good. It's one of those things where there's nothing we won't consider, but we also do the due diligence. So some jurisdictions, I'm sure, have maybe parameters around, well, we will consider this and we won't consider that. We're pretty flexible, and we'll try to work with anybody, but we will absolutely do the due diligence. So when the next year comes and you guys are in here questioning, we have to be able to answer on what we did and what why did we do that? What was the rationale?
Member for Labrador West.
I guess more there is, are there any plans to use more of the IC funds to continue with new rounds with the rental housing development loan program? Is there any more work going to be done there?
Mr. Ludmer. Mr. Ludmer.
Yes, Julian Ludmer. Thanks for the question. So that funding was provided to IBIC Corporation by the Department of Finance. They have indicated that they are not planning to recapitalize that program at this time.
Member for Labrador West.
When this loan was being designed, why didn't it include the requirements that a certain number of units be built on each project to be affordable units? I guess there was some ambiguity with the requirements there. Was there any rationale on why that was designed the way it was designed?
Mr. Ludmer.
Yes, Julian Ludmer. So as the minister said previously, there are some programs that this department is administering as opposed to designing and operating. So the housing program was one that was given to us to administer. We were not involved in the design of the program itself.
All right, thank you.
Member for Labrador West.
And yep, that's my final question for this section. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Back to the member for Terra Nova.
Thank you, Chair. Purchase services significantly over budget. Is there a reason why?
The minister.
Just sorry, say that one again.
Under purchased services, 4.2.01.
Purchase services. That's the, you want to talk about that? There was extra money spent on investment attractiveness programming, but Julian can give a better.
Mr. Ludmer.
Yes, Julian Ludmer. Just to be sure, this is 4.1.01. Is that correct?
4.2.01?
01, yes?
Yeah.
4.2. Excuse me.
2. Yeah.
My apologies. Yes, as the minister said, so we have a new investment attraction team that was recently created, and the operational funding for that team was placed in this division in the previous fiscal year. So what you see there in purchase services is money that was spent by the investment attraction team that was largely spent to design a new suite of investment attraction materials for the department. So that covers videos, web pages, print, pitch decks, and all manner of marketing-related expenditures. So we've created a new suite of general overarching materials to cover investment attraction opportunities and additional sector-specific materials which are currently being completed.
Member for Terra Nova.
Would any of the commercials and public information that's out there for the MOU be a part of that spending? No? Okay. Grants and subsidies are over budget by $500,000. Is there a reason why?
Mr. Ludmer.
Oh, go ahead, Julian.
Yes, Julian Ludmer. Yes, that $500,000 is the funding that was provided for the Lab West assistance, the emergency assistance for businesses affected by the wildfires.
Member for Terra Nova.
How many business navigators are currently employed in the department, and what are the hours that they're operating? Is there?
The minister.
I'll lead off, and I'll turn to Heather for more details. So there's currently 3 in the province, 1 in St. John's, 1 in Clarenville, 1 in Corner Brook. I think their hours are fairly regular hours, so no different than an EDO anywhere else. So it's not like they're working on a shortened time basis or anything like this. So fairly normal access hours, I think.
Okay.
Member for Terra Nova.
Any idea of what the volume of inquiries that you're getting is?
I think we have a
Heather
we do have an update.
Yeah.
I just don't know how recent it is.
Heather Tizard. Heather Tizard.
She lit up. Your light is on.
There it is. No.
I knew it was coming.
Since we launched on January 14th, we've had 135 inquiries.
Okay. Wow. The member for Terra Nova.
The new restaurant loan program, is that going to be administered by you guys as well?
The minister.
Yes. Yes, it's also administered by us. It's more like it's a combination. I mean, when you look at the initial request, and don't let my facetiousness here take away from the fact that it's an industry that is going through a tough time. The initial request came to the Premier's office and to the Minister of Finance, and it's also something that the Minister of Tourism deals with. We would play a role there because we're industry, and we'll administer it, but it's not like I've had these conversations myself with the head of Restaurants Canada or the local representative.
Member for Terra Nova.
And I guess I'll just make a statement, you know, any dates or details or any of that stuff won't be you guys. You guys will administer those. Details are coming from the other departments, fair to say?
That is absolutely my hope, similar to the help program with the fish harvesters. I feel the departments themselves should put that out. We'll help you get to that point we can administer, but that should be on them.
Okay. 4.3.01, grants and subsidies. What's the reasoning behind the $50 million reduction in grants and subsidies?
So that was the, Andrew, that was the $50 million for that residential housing program. So it was put in our spot we administered, and that program's over. So that would account for the basically the $50 million reduction in there. So we're at, I think, right now our normal or regular base budget.
Member for Terranova.
So, I mean, you guys are obviously responsible for a number of funding, support, and administrating of different programs throughout the province. And when we talk about economic diversification, we often refer to rural Newfoundland and Labrador, and I'm just wondering, is the whole scope of that come under you guys, or are those decisions made by you guys, or is input coming from other departments, or how does that work?
The Minister.
I mean, the reality to me is that, yes, it falls under us in some ways, although the Premier has created the Ministry of Rural Economic Development that's administered by the Minister for Transportation. I think they have a deputy minister. There is some interaction there, obviously, especially between the deputies have their conversations. We get a lot of input from the Premier's office. We get a lot of input from MHAs. So there's nothing that we won't consider or have that conversation on. And sometimes there's a difference too between the philosophical and the actual, and so we're open to philosophical ideas, but I mean, when it comes to economic development officers all over this province, they fall under us. I mean, you know, as Plum Point or in Port of Basque or Clarenville, they all fall under us, so that's where our sort of focus has been.
Terranova.
And a good group of people, I will add. Absolutely.
They're a good bunch, and if anything, we'd like to continue to spread the word. My only thing I would suggest is that the only advice or direction I've given is to empower them to find ways to say yes as opposed to find ways to say no.
Yeah.
Terranova.
No further questions for Section 4.
Good. I'll ask the clerk to recall this section.
4.1.01 to 4.3.01 inclusive.
Shall 4.1.01 through to 4.3.01 carry? All those in favor? Aye. Against? Carried. Final section. I ask the clerk to call.
5.1.01 to 5.4.01 inclusive, industry and economic development.
Shall 5.1.01 through to 5.4.01 carry? The member for Terranova.
Thank you, Chair. 5.1.01 purchase services. Can the minister explain the more than $1.5 million overspend in that department?
The Honourable Minister.
That's the good old Atlantic Cable Facility, our payment that was due this year or last year. So a part of the original agreement, we had to take over $1.5 million in annual maintenance and repair costs, so it came due.
I guess just a question for my own lack of knowledge or stupidity or whatever it is. So if we knew it was coming due, why is there an overspend, and how come it wasn't budgeted last year for this year?
Can I say ask finance? Am I allowed to say that?
The Minister.
You can say whatever you want.
I've said it before, maybe in one of our first assessments. I said ask finance.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. I mean, yes, it was known that it was coming. I don't know it's a case of a budget ask, or I can't explain the why sometimes. I can explain what it was, but.
Used to have a saying when I was in the military, ours is not to question why, ours is but to do or die. So I guess that's the same for you guys, huh? 5.2.01, regional economic and business development. What is the plan for economic diversification in the upcoming fiscal year? These are general questions that will come under that subsection, yeah.
I mean, I could turn to the ADM, because I tell you what we do. My thought process is this: like since I've been in there, we sort of operated from this, what we would call a roadmap, and it's things that we put together that are part of mandate items, things you read about in the media, things that came to us from people within the department, things that come from MHAs. Everything goes into one, and what do we think about it all? And it's not just all economic development in the sense of providing money to a business to start up. There's other bigger picture items like cell service, like all these other things that combine to it. And really it's a conduit to like where I would turn to the department responsible for rural economic development, because in a lot of what they're doing is more of the macro instead of the micro. Like they're talking about, you know, what's that connective tissue between it all? For me, the big challenge has been it's very hard sometimes to keep positions filled of the actual people on the ground. We want to make sure that we have a person there. We want to make sure that they have the resources and support that they need, especially now. It's 5 years out, but I mean, we went through a period of COVID there where people weren't in the office, people sort of drifted, and then we're trying to get them back and give them that empowerment. I mean, to me, there is a rural nature to all of this, and I don't think one will go at the expense of the other. I do think that a rural strengthening supports urban and vice versa. And again, I come at it from a bias of being a rural person. So specific items, I mean, there's none on the top of my head at the moment. But some days you come in and something presents itself, and there's some things we're also working on. And I'll tell you, like, cell coverage is one. And that's definitely one that might not apply right here in this heading, but that's a big one that people want. Yeah. Sector support in terms of whether it's outfitters, whether it's accommodations, whether it's the food industry, all these play a role. Another thing too, though, I'll toss in, there's a group called CCI, Canadian Council of Innovators, and just had a conversation on the way in this morning with one of these people. It's led by Jim Balsillie, you know, Blackberry Jim. Yeah. And they got a big presence here. And sometimes we just need to look at economic development differently and innovation differently than just what is the number of jobs created. So I'm open this year and had that chat with the guy this morning and said, you know what? We need to have that chat about what does prosperity and economic development look like, as opposed to maybe the same sort of measurables we've had. So it's hard to provide that sort of rock solid answer that people want, but I think it could have a better, you know, output on the end.
Member for Labrador West.
Thank you, Chair. Under 5.3.01, funding gone up nearly $10 million. What's the plan for use of this funding, and how will it be distributed, I guess, through the grants program?
The Honourable Minister.
So this is 5.3.01?
Yeah.
Okay, I believe, so there's two parts of this. 16.5 of this is cell and broadband service, so it's a carryover. And about 10 of it, just a little bit less than 10, is the base, the comprehensive economic development base. So like that's your regional stuff that comes in, your sector stuff that comes in. That's the standard funding that we have. So, I mean, some of it is projects that are in the tube right now working through. Some will be new ones that come along. The cell service, I'd love to toss all that money out myself, but in order to get full value, it has to be leveraged with a HOA and the provider, and in some cases the communities, which is why it's even more difficult and frustrating.
Perfect. Thank you.
Member for Labrador West.
Yeah, and under, I know for 5.4.03, the Green Transition Fund, has there not been any much uptake in a lot of this funding? Because under grants and subsidies there, we can see that only $2 million out of $11 million, and we're going to put 14 in there. Is the uptake not as much as it was expected?
What I would say, I'm going to take a stab at this, and then, of course, we'll see if there's an actual better answer. There's been a tremendous amount of uptake. So I've got a list here of all the approved projects. But initially, it was being done by call. So we put out a call, everybody comes in, and the problem is there's probably some worthy projects that just didn't make the cut that time. Then we did a second call, same thing. We're now moving to a continuous intake process. So I think what you'll see is the good news is the money's still there. And starting off, like, I mean, we had to hire new people, bring in new people to go through that screening process. I think what you'll see is a more seamless transition here now, where it's not just a call where, I got to tell you, I've talked to the people doing the work, and they got like 100 projects there that they're grading to figure out how many they can get. Now, if we can get more of a stream coming, we can do a better job of hopefully grading, getting more done, getting more money out.
Heather Tizard.
Heather Tizard, yeah, so that's exactly right. And I just want to mention, too, that there was a lot of interest. So in the two calls that we did, there were 171 submissions. in that fund. So, again, as the minister said, it just took a while to get through all of those, and a lot of those are still being assessed. So as we go into continuous intake, hopefully we won't see so much, dropped funding in a given year. But, as the minister said too, it's not gone, it's just carried forward.
Shout out to Bruce Miller, Bradley Thorne for doing good work.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Member for Labrador West.
Thank you. No, and the 600, or is there 6 million, I guess, each year? That's through the benefits agreement that funds the program itself. It's self-funding, correct?
Yeah, and that's actually going to rise up. So I think actually next year it goes to 8 for a couple of years, and it goes like to 10 and 12. So we still got a nice bit of runway left yet.
Okay.
And a lot of money to look forward to getting stuff done.
Perfect. And one last question there. With the Food Producers Forum, progress in creating a provincial food network, what work is being done or has been done in that so far this year?
Say that again, Jordan?
The Food Producers Forum progressing on creating a provincial food network. How was the work for that progressing? Or was that just that you guys just...
That might be led by FFA. Okay. We might play a role in that. Okay. So I'm happy to get you something to report back. So I don't think we're the lead on it. Okay. But we're definitely, like a lot of stuff too, and I always joke with like Steve Crocker, like he comes up with the idea, we pay for it, right? And that's what happens is we are the funding body a lot of times for the different things. So I think that might be the case here.
All right. Perfect. That was my final question. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Member for Terranova.
So I don't have a lot of questions for 5, so I got a couple of general questions, if that's okay with you right now. So I guess the first question is, and I didn't ask it when we started, but I assume because you've always had a little bit to say before we started, which you didn't this year, which surprised me, you not having something to say. But
I'm ending off on a high note, though.
Had to get that in there. Your binder, will we get a copy of the notes that were provided for you here today? And yeah, I know.
It's the man with the data sticks.
That's why I said it. You normally passed a jump drive over at the end of it all, so all good.
That's my fault. I was, he has them. There we are.
Thank you. I knew he would. We talk about cell service, and it's a huge deal everywhere. And not just cell service, but part of your issue, not your issue, sorry, but an issue now with the ambulances and everything is, we don't have numbers on houses, and in my district, as an example, I've had ambulances called that have showed up in other parts of the province. Cell phones could certainly solve a part of that through technology. They could ping, they could get a location from the phone. If someone were to call 911, there's different things that could happen. In other jurisdictions, certainly jurisdictions that rely heavily on wind, there has been a utilization of wind towers. If they meet a certain height, which all of the proposed wind towers here would, for certain, they're some of the largest in the world, to have cellular technology on the wind towers. And if it's not something that you have discussed, I would strongly recommend that it's something that we push for. It's a cheap alternative because there's also some conversation out there that wind towers impede cell service, and that's why they've put in these repeating stations and different things that help with cellular service. So it's something you should keep in mind. I don't know if the department has had that discussion, but
it's not a discussion I've had. Open to it. Biggest discussion on wind towers I've had is either get them up now or get them away from me. And so we'll make that note now, and I'm happy to have that conversation. It might change some people's opinions if they're like, well, I'll deal with the tower now if I can actually get cell service.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you explore it? That's the whole point of this, is that there's a ton of good ideas out there. Yeah. And I don't care about ownership of the idea. I care about if it makes sense, can we get it done? And I will honestly say a lot of what we've got done in my time here was somebody else coming and bringing forward, whether it's in this house, media story I read that I thought was cool, advocacy groups like Energy and Al, they've been great, people like that, get her done. So the same thing for this one. Again, the one challenge I will present though is dealing with the proponents.
Oh, absolutely.
And figuring that out, and I mean that's a whole, but it doesn't mean it's not worth exploring.
Community benefits.
There you go.
There's more than one way to skin a cat.
I like it.
So right now the refinery has, probably one of the largest, most accessible VLCs in the province, and we know that getting things to and from the island are, certainly when it comes to oil and gas, wind turbines, other things. And I know it's not government's responsibility to meddle in private business and industry, but has there been any discussion, certainly with, when we look at the idea of Grassy Point with LNG, and we look at hydrogen and getting it out of here, and which proponents are already situated to do those things, has there been any discussion with, I guess, double utilization or utilizing that facility to accommodate other proponents? And I know, again, it's not government's responsibility, but sometimes it's okay for us to make recommendations or get involved with.
The best thing I can say to that is that it's absolutely been a conversation.
Okay.
But that's probably all I can say to it.
Yeah. And from an oil and gas standpoint, the other thing, we know the situation with Beta Nord, from how far offshore it is and what it's going to take in order to get the women and men that are going to work on that vessel, if it were to go ahead out there. It's a big part of concerns for everyone. Have those conversations been had with CNLOPB or any others involved? Or
I haven't had that conversation myself with the regulator. I don't know if Craig or somebody else in the department has, and I don't know if technically it would fall under OHS. I mean, it's absolutely a conversation. It's just not one that I've been seized of at the moment or had brought to me. But having done the trip to Hibernia once, and then knowing that this is farther, like, it's just, and actually I spoke at a Unifor conference yesterday, and I said to these folks, like, my hat's off to people that make a living doing this work, because it's hard enough on any kind of industrial site, but one that you got to get in the chopper and put the suit on and go out to is, it's tough. And so, that will be a conversation. It's just one that hasn't been brought to me at this juncture.
Okay. West White Rose, so when topsides module comes from Corpus Christi, it will be mated offshore. And Minister, some of the questions that I've had with regard to DSS and other things. And I guess my question is that does commissioning an offshore hookup in any way circumvent the Atlantic Accord and allow the proponents to do things in a different manner? It can, and I guess back channels, and we've had a couple of conversations, some of the things that I hear are worrisome because the industry has been built based on a tragedy. When we look back to the Ocean Ranger and we know what happened in 1985 and how we got where we are, and we go to the Cougar crash and we understand again, and we know the significance of the Atlantic Accord and how we got to where we are and what the responsibilities are. Certain players, and I won't get into any of that, are in a position now where they have never operated in an offshore environment before, have never operated under our Atlantic Accord agreement, and whether it's intentional or not, there have been, I guess, warnings given by the CNLOPB and again, whether it's intentional or not, efforts to circumvent some components of regulatory and safety issues. Do you know if the mating offshore changes the water on the beams? Because I can't wrap my head around it.
So my take is that no, it would not circumvent or change anything. But speaking as to the situation you mentioned, or any situation, the first thing we do is activate it and go directly to the source, in this case CNLPB. So that was a conversation that when I got an email on a certain situation, forwarded that along to the right people right away. Have a conversation, that's forwarded on to the right people right away, because that's how it has to go, and we want to make sure that there's nothing untoward happening. And that's why I think it's important to have communication. I might not hear, but there's nobody ever come to me, but that's why you have to people that would have a connection to this industry or mining or whatever, you name it, listen and bring those forward. If it's a house issue, we'll do it too. So I don't think I missed anything there, Craig.
Okay. And I'll just go back to the Churchill Falls MOU. Obviously we know what's going on down in the States, which, we're going to enter into a time where we're going to negotiate an MOU with an entity that hasn't been our greatest friends in the past, that is going to operate, mostly with an entity that is certainly not our greatest friend right now. Historically, it's been different. I would argue that it changes the water on the beams with regards to the costing process and everything. And I understand the escalating clause that happens going forward, but the initial portion of that is based on, current value for Church Falls expansion, CF1, CF2. Has that been factored into the negotiation process?
The Minister.
So not to my knowledge, but again, I'm not the lead on that, so I don't want to speak for Jennifer, Carl, Dennis, whoever's doing that work. The good news is I think from all along, Quebec's thing was never long-term about going. Quebec's objective for power here has always been internal anyway. I don't think this was meant to be long-term power to the states, nor do you want to make a long-term decision on a current geopolitical situation. Best thing I can say to you is that I've had faith in the committee and the people doing the work, plus all the different advisors to come in, knowing that there's scrutiny now, and we've got oversight, we've got this, we got the House of Assembly to do all that. So I can't tell you specifically if that's been factored in, but I've had faith in them to keep in mind, things that come up along the way, and anything that we do has to be looked at with a 50-year vision as opposed to a today vision.
So during the negotiation, there was an agreement that there would be a committee oversight that would dissect anything that was going on, and the thought was that those reports would come back quarterly, and I mean, quickly enough, quarterly is here. So when can we expect to get our first?
I think so. I think the committee just put out their first one, or they just brought in some people. So like this is early April. The committee was struck, I think, in February. February. So I think at some point, I don't think it was meant for first quarter. I think it was probably, you'll see it in the second quarter, because by the time the committee was struck, retained the expertise. I know they've met and started up things like that are of concern to them. And in fact, all Newfoundland did a great job of summarizing Dennis Brown and all their report by saying, here's the different things we'll keep in mind, especially project management and all these concerns. So they got a website up and running now. They got all that. I think you'll see a report sometime while this House is sitting, I think.
The member's time's expired. Do you want to continue some questions?
Yeah, just
go ahead. Member for Terno.
Question to the chair. We're good till 12:03, and that's the 3-hour mark. Is that right? 12:04?
12:02:30.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll go.
12:01. I'm here. We can go beyond with.
No, we don't want to go beyond the time frame. That's why I'm asking. Churchill Falls MOU again. So when we talk about Northern Passage, Arctic sovereignty, Labrador West, I'm going to bundle all this up together when it comes to electricity. We know that the MOU presents power to those places in 2030, between 31, and 35 is the ramp up. And we can say that they don't need the power, but I can also tell you that the Department of National Defense knows that the power isn't there. So they're not going to say that we need X amount of power for a generation in order to start an F-18 or the things that they have. And if the power was there, I think it changes everything. It really do. Has there been thoughts of, I guess, through negotiation or any other way, trying to take back some of the power that's currently going through? I mean, I just think that, I know IOC could use it. I know for housing expansion, I know for housing in Goose Bay and other things, margins are that slim right now. Yeah. Have we looked at trying to access additional power prior to 2031? Because if you build it, they will come, I guess. I mean, that's the...
You want me to jump in? No, I was just going to say, I'm not aware that there's been any change to what's been presented out there. We are sort of where we are at this stage. I don't know if John knows anything that I don't know.
No.
The Deputy Minister.
John Cowan. Yeah, I mean, obviously Hydro has a duty to serve. I know under the MOU there's an additional 1,500 megawatts going to come back, so that will bring the power in Labrador to 2,000 megawatts. Okay. I agree there are enormous opportunities. You made a point earlier on about mines. I mean, a mine, roughly 100 megawatts generates 400 to 500 jobs, besides construction. So there are significant opportunities. Hydro does have a duty to provide power.
Just to advise the member, you have till 12:11 because we had the 10-minute recess.
Okay, all right. But we don't need all that time. No, I tell you, I'll end it here, and I will say thank you to everyone involved here this morning. And the minister is obviously surrounded by a very great group of people. I thank you for all the work you do, and the answers have been very clear and very forthright. And the minister has been open and transparent, as he always has been through my experience. And it's a good process. You know, not all the ministers come in here and they answer questions that aren't specifically shaped to the line item. So it's a great opportunity to, you know, ask questions that need to be asked and share ideas in some instances, I think. And you know, it's a great opportunity. I thank the minister and I thank everyone here this morning. And it was time well spent, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
The member for Labrador West.
Thank you. I just want to thank the minister and his team and for being here and once again answering our questions and, you know, having a great discussion on what's pertinent to us and that. So I just want to once again thank him. And it's always been great to this one. And I just looked at the notes there. You were the last one I did, the last estimates I did this year, and you're the first one I did this year. So I ended on a good note. I guess I'll start on a good note this time around.
All right. Would the minister like to make a few comments?
Just a few points, and so everybody's not worried. I won't take very, very long, but I feel I have to say a few things. So just number one, just thank not only the MHAs, my colleagues, but their teams for the work they do, and any research that comes in here. There's a lot of work to get in this, and you got multiple of these along the way. And Jordan was right. And I think Lloyd was right. Like, we don't, I've had these where it was very much line by line and very sort of adversarial, and I've never thought that was the way it should go, and I think we've been very wide open. You have a better conversation, and I stick to the fact that this is the best part of the budget process, not the speeches in the House always. So I thank the folks on the other side, and thank you for your teams. Again, the next thing I would say is thank you to the table staff for running this. This is a long, onerous process for them as well. I got a department here. You notice a lot of times I defer to everybody around me. It's because I've never pretended from day one to know everything. I'm just closer to the opposite, but I'm surrounded by awesome people who do amazing work, and I'd point out that I wish people could see the public service more, and the dedication. Look, these are people that have deferred vacations and put it off to get stuff out. Megan is actually on vacation right now. She started today. She's here because this got scheduled this morning. She's here today. I mean, and so that speaks to the dedication of the people I'm surrounded by, and why I think people should have faith is that when it comes out one of our mouths as a politician, there's already a natural inclination, so maybe not to trust us for political reasons, but they should have faith that we have a pretty good public service here to do amazing work and have skill sets and knowledge. And so I've been lucky to be surrounded by them, and this will be my 15th set of estimates, and this is the last one, and it was a hell of a one to go out on, and I appreciate your guys for a good conversation here today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask the clerk to recall this subheading.
5.1.01 to 5.4.01 inclusive.
Shall 5.1.01 through to 5.4.01 carry? All those in favor? Against? It's carried.
Total?
Total. Shall the total carry? All those in favor? Against? The total is carried. Shall I report the estimates of industry, energy, and technology? All those in favor? Against? It's carried. I'd like to thank everyone for your attention. Thank the minister, department officials, the committee. Our next meeting of the Resource Committee is going to be tomorrow, Friday, 11th of April at 0900 hours, and that's Tourism, Culture, Arts, and Recreation. I'd now ask for a mover of the committee that we adjourn. The member for, well, let's give him something to do. And I just blanked out on your district. Bonavista, shame on me. For Bonavista, all those in favor? Against? Thank you very much. Motion is carried.